Okay, at this time, we'll reconvene the city council meeting and continue on with the discussion on Silver Rock. Tim, are you done?
Well, we're checking something with the existing canal realignment agreement that we entered into with CVWD. I believe, and Mark is confirming this right now, that if a decision isn't made by June 1st, basically the default option is the parallel canal. Okay, I didn't know if that was clear or not to the city council.
But they can just proceed with what? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I think I got that impression in the report.
John, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, we as a developer, we're aligned with the city in that anything the city spends to fix the canal, whatever's left over isn't left over. We're backstopping the infrastructure side of this project. So in effect, that's tantamount to participation in the canal. That's the comment.
To what extent?
Yeah.
Because you have an infrastructure cost for Silver Rock.
Yeah.
The city has bond proceeds that it would otherwise spend on infrastructure. It could spend some on the canal in some range, depending on the option chosen. And if the city spends all of the proceeds of those bond monies on the canal, then we're on the hook to build the master site
So
infrastructure.
you'll back up anything beyond what we will spend with a bond to the total amount. If we have a bond proceed of $9 million, anything above that?
I don't think that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that whatever you spend, if you exhaust your funds that you have to spend on the canal, there's no money from the bond proceeds to apply to infrastructure on the site, and we're on the hook to build the infrastructure. So there's no participation by the city in that. So effectively, we're backstopping whatever decision the city makes on the canal.
So that would, like Frank had said, the wet, dry utility systems, any features, the park components, those types of things that we might contribute to help in the development of the resort destination.
That's right.
Those would be absorbed by you. And
That's
what
right.
impact would that have then on the overall master plan timing and ROI based on what your numbers are looking like?
It's a discussion that we'll end up having about the underwriting, because it's all in how the project economics flow to the bottom line and making what we're bringing forward economically feasible.
Frank, digging back in my memory, we were discussing that we were going to do the infrastructure, meaning the street work from Jefferson to a T section where it would go from 54 clear to 52. At one time, we were discussing that we were going to do this prior to development. Is that still in the mill, that we are anticipating doing any of this?
Let me see if I can give you a simple answer. First off, yes, under the development agreement and DDA that we had, or disposition and development agreement with Lowell, the way the economics worked back then was that the then redevelopment agency was going to deliver finished or rough graded building pads with utilities to site and the roadway system built and a permanent clubhouse built, in conjunction with them then buying the property from the redevelopment agency at fair market value.
Okay.
So at that point in time, under those economics, the canal wasn't even part of any discussion, and it was that we were going to fund those improvements.
Yeah, that's what I was remembering in that, but I didn't know whether any of this was carried over beyond when Lowe was taken out of the equation.
No. Basically what occurred is...
We don't have an RD, because it was the RDA.
No.
We're going to pay for that.
That was the economics that formed the basis for that transaction at that time. And when the DDA expired, then we did not carry anything over.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to know.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Okay. If we went with the underground portion, if we went with the underground, option one, when would CVWD need some money?
Well, I'll let Mark answer.
When would we be writing a check?
We've talked about, what would happen is the construction agreement would be created, and we would bring that back in July. And the proposal from both our staff and CVWD staff would be that the payments would not start before January 1st of next year.
Okay. Okay, and I heard reference to chain link with respect to the current canal that we have. Is there chain link anywhere?
No.
No? Well, somewhere there is.
The question was, would at some point we have to put a chain link on the canal as they have on other parts of the canal outside of Silver Rock? And that was a question maybe Mark could help us with. If, you know, if we do, I don't mean to cut in, but if we were to develop Silver Rock around this canal with hotels, would at some point that canal have to be chain linked?
Secured.
Right.
Yeah, if the canal is relocated as the developer has proposed out along Jefferson Street, in and around the public, it would have to be fenced. Not necessarily chain link,
Right.
but
Yeah.
wrought iron or some type of
Yeah.
protection, because, you know, we got the deep
Understand.
pockets,
Yeah.
and somebody...
What about
Okay.
if it were just relocated next to where it is now?
No, I think out on the golf course,
Yeah. Right.
it's not an issue, because this time we're requiring a roadway and a little buffer between the golf course and the canal, and that's sufficient.
Have you seen the concept of what Merriman proposes, the development out there?
I have not seen the development. All I've seen is a proposed alignment for this canal hybrid option.
I was concerned about.
I haven't seen anything about the development.
Chain link right
No.
there.
Okay.
So if we did, if the hybrid were feasible and we did decide to go with that, then would the city be responsible then for fencing all that?
Well, it'd be part of the project.
It
And
depends on where the dollar amount ends, and they have to pick it up. Who's going
What
to,
was the
it's either
question?
us or them.
Well, I know that.
Yeah.
I figured that out.
Yeah.
I got
But
that.
I was just wondering, Tim, would there be a way in which we could find out what the cost would be now, about what our responsibility would be as much as bond proceeds are beyond that point? So we could get an idea of what kind of participation they're going to do.
Well, at this point, I mean, I think what we're saying is the water district is going to contribute about $3.9 million to the project. So anything above that amount is going to be at the city's cost. So if we do the pipeline option, we're saying that's about $10.4 million of city cost. If you do everything, including relocating the L4 pump station, plus some design costs that haven't been added in there, that would be the city's obligation. The bond proceeds, the number I think we've been working with is 9.2 million. So the difference would have to be made up either by some other source. Developer or
Yeah.
city's general
Okay.
fund is the only
Well,
means I
that's
know
what
of.
they're committing to, as I understand it.
Does that include the cost to bring the course back into play?
It does.
It
We
does.
did include the repair work for the golf course under either option.
Lost revenue.
No, and we included lost revenue in those figures that you see for the two options. The only thing that wasn't in there was basically construction, administration, design, some of the, and survey were the things that we were talking about that still would have to be figured out and brought back ultimately, but that isn't included in those costs.
So I have another question, just a point of clarification, on the bond funds, if we said tonight to, yes, we just want to bury this and do the underground, and we don't have to really write a check until 2014, if we didn't have a declaration from the DOF, let's say until March, April, May of next year, and those bond funds were released for us to spend, if we've spent reserve or general fund money in writing our check, can we then use those bond funds to
We would
backfill
have
that?
to structure the agreement with CVWD that to the extent that the city advances general fund dollars in advance of getting our permission to spend the bond proceeds, that we would do a swap of funds at, when we had the bond funds available. And I don't think CVWD would mind as long as they knew they were going to get paid, but we might have to do something along those lines where we would use general fund dollars at the beginning and then try to recoup those with, replacing the dollars when we're down the road.
They would pay them back with their general fund money.
And then we'd
I'm just thinking, the wheels are turning.
Yeah.
But, okay. And Tim, on the lost revenue with the pipeline and the golf course impacts, do you feel like those are two really valid figures?
For the pipeline option, the 63,000. That leaves, about $100,000 to fill in the canal.
Right.
Then we would have about, and grade it, and then we would have another $400,000 to work with, how we're going to restore it with turf, whatever we're looking at, because then we wouldn't have the easement any longer to contend with, and
Right.
so we would have some freedom there as to what we could design, but it should be enough.
Okay, on the fill in the canal, just assuming we did that, what portion of that does CVWD do, and then where do we come in?
Well, they would, as Mark was explaining, they would basically break up the top of the channel, and probably poke holes in the bottom so that it would drain. But then they would just backfill in as much as they have material from the new canal, in order to do that. So the rest of it is up to us. Under the pipeline option, you're going to be excavating in the area where you're taking where you're installing the pipe. So presumably you could possibly have material from that you could use to fill in the channel. We could scrape more dirt off of the 290 undeveloped acres at Silver Rock. We could find a way to do a borrow pit or something along those lines. So we would have to come back with that. But there's material that I think we're going to have under either option to backfill the existing channel.
Okay, but under the parallel canal option, well, you've got construction cost of 0. So with the parallel canal, we're going to fill in the other one anyway, the one that's there now. So
That's
either
correct.
way, we're going to be doing that.
Right.
And are those costs listed here with the parallel, the parallel canal option?
That's part of that.
1.7?
That's part of, the 1.7 million that we've got to do after
Okay.
CVWD gets done cutting through the other canal. Right.
Okay. But that's, of course, none of this is really hard figures, but we're still going to have that. I mean, that's going to be a very costly venture.
It is. I mean, I will admit that these cost estimates, because of where we are in the process, are conservative. Brad Danae's looked at them very closely. Brian and I have looked at them. The water district's looked at them. But they're the cost of what we're seeing for similar construction, plus another 10 or 15%. So it's the best numbers that we have to work with right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. Anything else?
Yeah, comments.
Comments?
Yeah. I just I can't justify spending in advance of receiving the bond money by doing the underground option. I guess that money is going to be spent on that piece of property most likely in some way, shape, or form. And by getting what we need to done at $2.5 million and moving forward with parallel and perhaps then exploring the hybrid, that commitment of money at least is defined, knowing that I'd much rather use that 9.2 to partner with the development that's going to be the generating revenue resource for this city in the future, and really co-op in that manner and look at how that can be best used like it had been discussed under the Lowell agreement, versus just, I don't want to say blowing it, because it's clearly still an option, but I honestly, I just can't see $10.4 million doing this when we have so much more that has to get done on that piece of property. And if we can proceed with parallel so that CVWD gets their answer and moves forward, and then work very closely with them in short order to reconfigure what's going to look best for that whole piece of land, that's my preference. I cannot support the underground as it's stated right here with all that. Knowing that, Kathy, if you have any projection on what the $41 million litigation component against the state of California, how long that's going to take. And then if we were sitting here a year ago, we were looking at pulling out $2.5 million out of reserves to get a balanced budget again. And that would have been the second or third year in a row we did that. We're moving on to the budget, which is great because we're actually going to see a surplus, and this staff has done a phenomenal job with our direction to turn it around, but we still have a long way to go. And so while we're looking at the bright side, and it does look more favorable, if it was 12 months ago, 15 months ago, 2 years ago, I still couldn't see spending the 10.4 on this type of thing when we were in those types of decision-making over, we're scrutinizing grant monies, budget items, and here we've got bond proceeds that really can develop infrastructure, and I guess that's, the timing is concern for me, because if something goes wrong, again, with the state, and something happens to what reserves we might have left, they're going to be kind of, you know, an IOU, so to speak, until that 9.2 becomes available.
We do anticipate having a trial court hearing on our matter. We're shooting for August, but that's just the trial court. You know, if we prevail, they very well may appeal. If we, you know, we would appeal if, you know, so we could go on for years.
Which means we wouldn't get our certificate of completion, which means we wouldn't be able to release the 9.2 to use.
Correct.
Which means we'd be continuing to borrow from what reserves might be left, even though we wouldn't be making that $41 million payment.
Correct.
But at some point, the state could also withhold future sales tax revenues while this is
Well,
appealing.
we would
down the road.
definitely be getting an injunction, and my prediction is we would get one to prevent that. And we may hear on the league's litigation that that option is not. And it may be that we go to hearing in August, we prevail, and I will say that the AG's office has been, on many of the matters, have when they've lost, they've said, let's not mess around. But the problem is with this, there are so many other public agencies that have the same issue that I predict they're going to want to take it up. So we may be a long time away from getting that certificate, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the parallel mode at this point,
Terry?
financial.
It's really hard to get where you get. You get grayer hair, you get older, and it gets harder. And it really gets hard for the city of La Quinta because we've been so prosperous and we've done so well. And the planning for our future was exactly on line until somebody came along and said that line no longer exists, slash. And they cut us in the neck. They just cut us in the neck. You know, the new reality is the new reality. And everything, part of the new reality is that we don't know anything. We don't have the answers to anything. So what we need to answer is what is most important to the city of La Quinta in being able to function and move forward in a reasonable way. And I agree. I just don't see how we can commit that kind of money. It certainly seems like the city that we were, that's what we would have done. The person that I was, that's what I would have voted for. Times have changed.
Lee?
Thank you.
Ooh, little ones.
First, I want to thank staff on putting this together. You guys really did a great job putting this report together. This is a very complicated matter, and I think you guys did a good job. I don't like you guys keep raising the cost on this, though, but, no, I think you guys have done a great job with this. The La Quinta that we, quote, used to be would be to do it right and do it right the first time. And everything we did was in the most quality manner possible. And just because the state has, quote, cut our throat and decided to steal $41 million from this community, doesn't mean that we should reduce our expectations for the city. We should still maintain the most value possible. And this is an extremely difficult position to be in for our city. We don't know the timing with the state. We don't know the timing with the bond funds. But one thing we do know for sure is this underground canal would add a substantial amount of value to Silver Rock. And it would add a substantial amount of value to the development of Silver Rock for those looking in the future for Silver Rock. And I hope that the developers understand the increase in value that we would be bringing to that Silver Rock property by putting this underground. And it is my first and foremost concern that we add value, and we do it right the first time, and that this is what the canal would be. I don't know that it's going to cost us much, but it's not. You guys run the numbers. You guys are the engineers, and you've done a great job with that. But I still think we need to invest in the future, and we need to do it right the first time, and not look back 5 years later and say, gee whiz, I wish we would have done it different. I think we need to do it right the first time, as we always have in the past.
Christie?
I'm a neutral. I can see both sides of this. I think the value added down the road would be worth rolling the dice. On the other hand, I'm not a gambler. And we have some figures. Those can change, as Lee said. They can escalate. I don't know. It's a real conundrum. So I guess I'll wait and see what you have to say, Mr. Mayor. I'm riding the fence.
Well, this is still a study session.
No, it's business.
It's business.
You're right.
Thank you.
Our budget is the study session.
That's the next item.
Next item, and that.
Yeah, I thought we had to June 1st, and we were going to have a meeting on June 1st.
Yeah, I guess my big concern is $10 million. That's a lot of money, especially under the situations we're in right now. And that, but I also see the value that Lee is talking about as to what we do for the future of that property. And that, are we going to look back and say we made a mistake? And that by not going the way we would all want to go, and to get rid of that canal, the visual effects of the canal, and that. I'm like Christie. I'm torn between the issues, and that aesthetically, I'm concerned about it, but financially, I'm again concerned that we're going to spend that kind of money. I will say this. I'm disappointed in Merriman that you didn't step up to the plate like I was told when we interviewed, and that to be part of it, you're playing games with me on the financing. So I guess I can't count on you. At this stage of the game, I guess that unless we could work something out with this hybrid direction to get it away from the interior of the property and get it to the perimeter of the property, I guess I have to go with the financial aspect of the thing, because I'm concerned just exactly where we're going to be on this thing. As much as I don't like it, and I would rather have it on the perimeter and get away from the aesthetics of what it's going to look like. And I know it's not going to look the best when we're dealing with a 4- or 5-star hotel and a first-class facility. And that, I hope you got a lot of money for landscaping in that, because I'm going to be one of the staunch opponents to make sure it's screened off aesthetically, meaning landscaping. So that's my position.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I would like to,
Well, Christie,
she's still neutral.
did you want to come back?
No, it's a vote time.
Okay.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I propose approval of option number 2, the parallel canal option.
Second.
Moved and second. Unless there's any comments, please vote. The motion passes. Okay. All right, at this stage, we'll move on to our study session, and that's preliminary fiscal year 2013-2014 budget.
Mr. Mayor, are you ready?
Yes,
All
staff
right.
report.
I think we're all just kind of, we feel your pain vicariously, that's for sure. Our purpose here tonight is to introduce the draft fiscal year 13-14 budget. And what we're doing is laying out the parameters of what we went through with formulating this budget, and as we did with the reorganization effort. I've invited the executive team here to join us on the dais because we all had a function in preparing this budget. In addition, we have Chris here with us tonight because he has played a pivotal role, as well as Amy McCormick from the manager's office, in working through the numbers, helping us with this presentation, and getting us in a position of moving forward. Because of lack of space, we haven't been able to invite up Jody or Matt. So they're positioned down there because they're going to be part of this presentation also as we get into our public safety discussions. As we move forward, let's discuss just for a moment the fact that this budget is here to help implement the mission statement of this organization. This is something that the executive team worked on when we started going through the reorganization process, because we wanted to define what is it that we're here for and what is it that we do. And with this mission statement comes a set of guiding principles. Those principles include a reverence for safety, excellent service, relationships, diversity, determination, stewardship, and adaptability. That is the foundation upon which this executive team moves forward now, and both presents this budget and how we move forward as an organization to deliver our services. As stated in the budget message, this is a transition budget. What we're trying to do is transition from where we were at in looking at deficits, transition from where we were at in our format for our budgets that got rather complex and complicated over the years, and transition from where we're at in terms of our dialogue of where funding is and where funding's going and what we're investing in. As such, we are grouping costs in a different manner, as you've noticed in the draft budget in front of you, And our goal at the end of the day is to make this a more simple document so people can understand it, our citizens can understand it, and as we go through here, we're increasing transparency. So with this transition budget, we're laying out how we propose that this community invests in our future. We're also looking at how this budget implements the vision that we laid out here in January of a new organization and organization structure. We're looking at some new cost structures that Robin will get into in a moment and how we account for our costs. And also, we're looking at our numbers in a new way. And that we have a general fund which we focus in on, and the general fund says here's what we're paying every year and here's our reserves. But there are also a variety of other funds that take us from a general fund budget of $34 million to a total operating budget of roughly $70 million. And part of our reason and rationale for laying that out is the fact that if you look at some of the investments we're proposing to make, they're not going to be funded by the general fund. So we didn't want to get caught in the vortex of people saying, well, where's that money coming from? You got some secret hideaway funds that you've been slotting things away with over the years?
Slush funds.
Slush funds? And so basically, we're here to show you the total picture. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Robin to get into the budget highlights of this budget and start the discussion on where we're at and where we're going.
Thank you, City Manager. The City Manager was hired almost a year ago now, and I came on board a couple months later. We were both challenged with balancing the city budget. I'm pleased to present to you tonight not only a balanced budget, but a projection of reserves, excess revenues over expenditures of $1.1 million. And we attain that through a variety of ways.
It is on.
Okay. We arrived there in a number of ways, as over the months, you know, by proactively maintaining expenditure levels. And now, with this budget, we're delivering on promises that we made to invest in our staff and technology. As the city manager already mentioned, although we focus on the general fund and those reserves, this budget contains a variety of other funds, including our special revenue funds, capital projects funds, enterprise funds, internal service funds, as well as the successor agency, the housing authority, and the financing authority. So, turning to the revenue side for just a moment, we have we're projecting a total amount of revenues of $34.4 million, and as you can see on this graph, the largest piece of that is 22.6, or 66%, and that's comprised of taxes. That includes property tax, sales tax, our transient occupancy tax, franchise tax, and so forth. The next largest piece is what we're calling intergovernmental, and what that consists of basically is our motor vehicle in lieu and our fire service tax credit, and that's 26%, or $8.9 million. Those two pieces make up 92% of our general fund revenues coming in. And then we have the smaller areas that I won't touch on too heavily. So this next graph or chart shows that our top three revenue producers, property tax, sales tax, and transient occupancy tax, are all trending upward. Going to the next slide, we're looking at expenditures. Our total expenditures that we're projecting in this budget are $33.3 million. The largest piece of that is public safety, consisting of police and fire. That makes up 55%, or $18.3 million. And the way that we got here, and I think it's important to say, and I really commend all of the directors and staff of the city, is by consciously making an effort to hold down expenditures in the city, and that's how we got here today. The only other thing I want to point out on this chart is the yellow sliver of $671,200, and that is our community contributions that we give to outside agencies. And we're going to talk about that more later in the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the city manager to present his budget.
At this point, we'll go through the various budgets just to give you a highlight of what's going on and things of that nature. From you looking at this slide, it looks like I came on board and really decided to go wild and increase the staffing levels and the costs of our budget. Prior to the reorganization, the city manager's budget in the current year, the 12-13 budget, has 3 separate divisions. Those were the city manager's office, the economic development group, and the marketing group. Through the reorganization, the marketing efforts have moved over to Edie's shop and community services. Our economic development efforts were divided up into contract services, such as those with the Chamber of Commerce, which also went to Edie's shop, and we'll touch on that in a bit. And then we had other personnel that unfortunately were leaving the organization or left the organization. So if we look at what last year's budget was, or the current year budget, it totaled $1.472 million, and it's not on the chart. Our current year budget is proposed to be $602,000. That's roughly a 59% reduction in the budgeted amount. So what did we do this past fiscal year? Well, one of the big things was to look at and come up with the reorganization plan. We didn't do that single-handedly. The executive team came up with that. We helped facilitate the process through both internal and external resources. We initiated various strategic initiatives, which we're going to start talking about a little bit later, dealing with our properties, dealing with Silver Rock, and dealing with the state of California. We're working to empower our management staff and staff in general, and many people who have come to City Hall of late have said they see a new spirit in the staff itself. Yep, part of that is a result of the reorganization and people going, gee, I hope I'm not next. But a lot of it's dealing with the fact that we're looking at folks and saying, okay, what do you want to accomplish? How do we empower you to get there? And how do we best implement our mission and our guiding principles? And then finally in the manager's office, we established a business unit. This business unit hit the ground running. I think Amy started on a Monday, and by Friday she was dealing with the dispute we had with the Department of Finance and tracking our general fund loans and coming up with schedules, and in essence working with legal counsel to do the activities necessary for our meet and confer. Chris started on a Wednesday about 2.5 weeks later, and gee whiz, he was thrown into that, and then gee whiz, he's now working on the budget, and we're trying to figure out how worksheets work and things of that were left behind. So that business unit is living up to its basic charge of moving through the organization and basically helping our departments and helping other areas as needed. So what are we going to do in 2013-14? Well, first and foremost, it's very important for our office to deliver on the promises we made to this organization. We went through the reorganization, and now we want to go in and start doing and delivering the system improvements, the technology improvements, the training improvements, the mentoring improvements that we had talked about. We're also looking at actively defending the city, given the actions that you have allowed us to take in terms of the litigation regarding the $41 million in reserves. We still have not received the final state controller's audit of the agency transactions, and we may or may not be dealing with real property assets as we go forward. As well as then, we're looking again to enact our citywide training and investment policies and move this organization into the 21st century. Well, we can't do this without the prudent guidance of the elected officials. So then we visit the city council budget. That budget and these numbers reflect something different that's in your budget account. When I had lunch with Councilmember Osborne today to go over the budget, he raised some points about, gee, you guys really slashed our insurance. And we went back and looked at things and realized that some of the budget's numbers were not translated correctly. So this reflects the true budget, showing a $300 decrease in expenses. And basically, in looking at the highlights of what the council has done for us over the years, and over this year in general, they basically helped us guide the reorganization effort by having the courage and the tenacity to say, okay, how are you going to reduce this deficit? And then having the courage to accept the fact that we would have to violate a long-held principle of actually reducing our staff and workforce. You also came forward in August of last year to set the pace for Silver Rock and the village development, which has brought us today with Merriweather, and where we're going with proposals that now Les is looking at and will be looking at for the development of properties between Old Town and the Library and Senior Citizen Center. You also then had the courage, if I will, and the tenacity to say, go forward and prove our case with the state regarding the $41 million. It's not easy to sue the state of California, and it's not easy to name as part of the suits the taxing agencies that we have agreements with from the former redevelopment agency. But we did so, and now we're moving forward with that. And then finally, you've lent your support to the executive team in terms of saying, yeah, we think there's a need for updating our systems. Yeah, we think there's a need for updating our technology. Many of you have come by to visit and laid out the fact that, gee, on certain applications we can get this, but on some of our city website applications and otherwise, they're a little bit behind times. So with those points and guidance, and with those words of encouragement, we are now moving forward with what's contained in this budget. Turn it over to Ms. Jensen.
Well, we're pretty stripped down. We have cut back. In my department, we are no longer going to planning commission meetings unless, you know, there's something very specific that Les feels that he really needs guidance on. We're not getting routine staff reports to review. We are continuing with code enforcement and, you know, those things that we've gotten direction for. We have had the luxury in recent years to be litigation-free, and we're still mostly litigation-free. We've got just our Point Happy litigation, which I'm hoping will be able to get to an end. And as painful as it is, the litigation with the state is rid of mandate. There's no discovery. It is pretty streamlined. It's more like law in motion, so I don't really anticipate a lot of expense. We're going to give it our all, I guarantee you. We are giving it our all, and it's not like we're not going to do some research to save money. We will put everything we have into it because it is a bet the farm case. But I don't anticipate that even with that, it'll be a relatively short amount of time, and we've really done almost all the work already. The presentation that we made up at DOF was our case, and so I feel comfortable. In recent years, our expenses have gone down, and we do everything we can from right up to, I've taught a course on effective use of our time, and I think the staff really took it to heart. And now when they give me assignments, they give me the background so I don't have to spend a lot of time running around looking for things. They give me a memo outlining it all with the documents attached. So I think we've really worked well on lowering the cost, and I think I'm pretty proud of the fact that I think we'll lower it even more with what we're facing.
I have a question while we're still here. How much of, what percentage of, or if any, are the legal costs for the lawsuit with the state? From the general fund, isn't?
The general fund will be paying for that.
The general fund will be paying for that?
Correct. It cannot come out of the administration costs for the RDA, so.
Yeah,
no,
well,
unfortunately not.
At one time, there was some discussion that the successor agency can cover some legal.
They do. The successor agency covers legal fees associated with projects, very specific projects. For example, Coral Mountain was a separate line item on the ROPS. Washington Street Apartments.
Anything that's already,
Yes.
Gotcha.
So, but this is not covered.
yeah, thank you.
Well, the next is the city clerk's department, and we have a $51,000 reduction. This is mostly due to the reduction of one office assistant position, which happened in January. But it's also because there's no election in 2013. So my budget
Thank
jumps
goodness.
dramatically every other year. So that helps. So the accomplishments for 2012/13 includes a lot of citywide training that we do. We revised the contract processing system throughout City Hall and went to each department and trained them in it, and it's much more efficient. I can say that no contract gets by me, and if it does, it doesn't get by Wanda. So we will no longer have contracts that were approved and not signed, or signed by some and not others. So it's become very efficient. In my department, which is quite small now, we are cross-training every position with every essential task, so that should one or two people be out, which is half the department, it can still function. So that takes a little time, but we will soon have a instruction manual for every essential task, so that almost anybody can step in and the department will run. I'm happy to say that we have electronic document recording now with the county. It took us many months to do it. We had to go through vetting and fingerprinting, and we had to send our computer off to be checked. And they do spot checks on us to make sure that we have the room locked when we're not using it, and we have our little cookies locked up. But what this allows us to do is, rather than send all our documents to the county and wait 4 to 6 weeks for them to come back recorded, we can record them same day now.
Wow.
We can scan them, send them in, and they guarantee a 3-day turnaround, but we've been getting them the same day in many cases, back recorded. So that's wonderful, and we are able to do that for others who we work with, such as the lot line adjustments and the parcel maps that we do for folks. And we've also, the city clerk's office has taken the lead on a few citywide working groups. One of them was the agenda process, which you've all felt a little pain with, and I thank you for sticking with us. But the working group was made up of people throughout the city, and we mapped out the process we were following, and we were able to cut out probably half the steps. We were able to keep the documents digital from birth until the final printing, which gives much better quality. And we'll be able to take that digital packet and swing it right into Laserfish and onto the website, so that it never becomes paper, which degrades the quality. It'll just be a beautiful process. We still have a few tweaks, but we'll get it right. And of course, we want to make sure that we're fulfilling your needs in this process. But it's helping staff in that there's no longer people walking across the building with paper, to get it checked, report by report. It's all done digitally. So we're happy to say that. We have a couple other working groups that we're working on to review the website. We did one to standardize agendas and minutes throughout the city, and the clerk's office hopes to continue to do that in not only assisting with research for all other departments, but in helping connect us all. So for 2013-14, We'll continue the training. We'll help folks throughout all departments better research the documents on our archive. We'll work on the electronic agenda. We'll help them with records management within each of their departments. We will start digitizing permanent records by sending them out huge amounts at a time, so that we can eventually get all permanent, essential permanent records into the digital archive. And then, of course, in the spring, I'll be gearing up for the 2014 election.
Wow, we'll be busy. Maybe one comment there, maybe you won't have as many public record requests next year. We can hope.
Edie.
Thank you. The Community Services Department does have an increase of $1.3 million, but I want to explain that. As Frank alluded earlier, we actually took on several different departments, and with that we took on the Marketing and Community Relations, which was formerly in the City Manager's office, and so we'll be making some changes to that, particularly by looking at our digital improvements. We really think we need to do some strengthening in our digital, and you'll see that. We'll be bringing that to you in early June and walking you through the marketing strategies for next year. And then the public buildings, we've taken over a preventative maintenance program that's been initiated. We've also taken over the janitorial contract for all city buildings, and we're looking at making those things better and really getting a handle on that. So that's the new assumed responsibilities. We had one reduction. We only have 9 employees in the whole division, in the whole department, and they do a lot of contract management to make sure that the services are provided well and that we're holding people accountable to those contracts. So the accomplishments for this year, we worked with the Chamber and the Desert Recreation District on the 4th of July event, along with promoting that event that was held. We implemented and adopted a park program, and that became important because we made a 15% reduction in our park maintenance contract, and we had 4 different groups that participated in that last year, and we anticipate that we'll have others next year. And it can be anything from cleaning up a park to overseeing to being involved with different aspects of a park. As I mentioned, we increased some digital efforts, increasing the Facebook posts and activity, added Twitter, and worked with the Public Works Department and other departments to promote and get the Go request out. And I think Tim's going to speak to the effectiveness of that. It's been extremely effective in terms of having the community participate. We completed the 9/11 sculpture, which was a community project that took place and took about a year to complete because it was fundraised. A young student fundraised that project, and then we had a lot of subcontractors and coordinated the effort for that particular project. And we just completed a project at the JEA Living Center, and that's in place, and that's been completed.
What is the JEA Learning Center?
It's the JEA Living Center. It's the new Alzheimer's Center off of Washington and
Kaleo Bay.
And that facility was the Double Dipper, if you recall, the grandparent and the grandchild reading the book, and that art project is now completed.
It's gorgeous. I toured the facility yesterday. It's gorgeous.
Yep.
And that art piece is just, it's stellar. So.
It's a very nice job. And then lastly was the preventative maintenance program. They've looked at all of our facilities. We're yet to receive the report back on that, but that report then will become the strategic plan that we will use to maintain all of our facilities, and that will be part of our capital program in taking care of what we have, and we'll be able to outline a program for you that will be completed next year. So the highlights then, as we spoke, we're going to be developing a digital marketing plan, and that digital marketing plan is going to be focused primarily on the Play in La Quinta website. There will be other elements to that, but we're going to really focus on search engine optimization, making that website stronger and more functional, and we'll be focused on those efforts. We're going to As part of the capital improvement plan, we're looking to renovate and make some ADA improvements along with some expansion of the Fritz Burns Pool and the ADA improvements and renovation of the La Quinta Senior Center along with a fitness component. We're going to analyze the citywide recreation facility needs. It was brought to our attention we need to take a look at the north area. And so we're going to be looking at what kinds of recreation facilities would be in the north area, whether that's a recreation center or a recreation center with tied with other amenities. We're going to be looking at that and working with other groups to see what kind of interest we might have there. And then we will be updating our Art in Public Places strategic plan, and that plan outlines all of our art in public places, where they're located, who we work with, what kind of art we have in place, and what our needs would be for the future. So those will be the highlights for 2013-14.
Good.
Thank you.
While you're up, Edie, I'd like to take the opportunity on behalf of the City Council to tell Carolyn Duran congratulations on being Mom of the Year, and that it's a wonderful experience, and to congratulate her on her acknowledgement.
I'll let her know that. Thank you.
All right.
So moving back to finance, again, we are in the predicament of looking like we have an increase in our budget of $137,392. The entire reason for that is we used to get reimbursed for a lot of our salaries for the time we spent on the RDA, and that reimbursement has been decreased by $179,000. So if you factor that out, we actually did have a decrease in our expenditures. So what have we accomplished during the year? Well, we reformatted the budget document. We've implemented the short-term rental program, which we have over 300 registrations right now, and I wanted to just let you know that that program is really gaining momentum. Most of the residents that have rentals that weren't previously registered are complying with the program, and we've gotten very few complaints. We've survived 5 successor agency audits from either the DOF or the State Controller's Office. And then we've had 2 of our annual audits with the Air Quality Management District and our regular city audit. So moving forward, what are we going to highlight for next year? It's very exciting. We want to revamp our financial systems, which includes implementing new software. The software that we have currently in place is over 10 years old and has not been upgraded at all. And we want to continue to further enhance the budget. And going back to the new financial system, we're hoping then to be able to report to you in real time. If I can go back just for a minute to the accomplishments, I just wanted to let you know that we have done several electronic things. We're able now to transmit a lot of the stuff that we have to do to the taxing entities, the federal and the state, for our payroll taxes. We do that automatically. We're also working on, we're in the finishing phases of our check stubs being fully electronic, so we don't have to use the paper anymore. With that, I'll turn it over to the police department, and they'll report on their budget.
Good evening. As you can see from the slide, public safeties went up $360,000, and wanted to take a moment and talk a little bit about that. That number was significantly higher, but what we did is myself and the captain sat down with the city manager, city staff, and we wanted to create a leaner budget, because typically in the past, Sheriff Department has always applied a 5% across the board projection for the budget. We don't always meet that, as far as we don't always come to that level on the budget. And there are certain areas that we wanted to look at to see if there was some way of leaning it out to get a more accurate picture of what the budget was going to be. One of the areas that we looked at was the overtime allotment that was set aside for officers and for investigators. And there, you know, I looked back over 10 years to see if we were ever reaching these numbers, which was $3,000 and I believe the other number was 1750. And using those numbers, I was able to trend and actually reduce some of those numbers to give a more accurate account of what we can expect. Now, that's not to say that if something bad, really bad happens, that we may have to come back to council and ask for more money. But again, we're going forward at this budget, trying to lean it out a little bit. The other thing that we looked at is the officers that are specifically assigned to La Quinta, you pay for productive hours only. In other words, you're not paying for their vacations or sick time and stuff like that. So again, we trended what are the average officers using out of 100% of what we were typically budgeting for in the past. We looked at that group of individuals and try to come up with a tighter number for you folks. And by doing that, we actually came in at about $186,000 less than that amount up there. But as you know, with anything, with the big gorilla in the room with the department this size and contract services with police, the lion's share of that cost, that increase, has to do with the bargaining units, the different contracts that they've gone into with various employees. Besides that, it's the typical increases with logistics and supplies. So that's something that, again, gets passed along to the contract city. But on that, I'd like to take a moment and put this out there as well, is that there's a government law that says that the sheriff department cannot make a profit. We cannot turn a profit off of a contract city. So whatever our costs are your costs. That's what it comes down to. Next slide. Okay, some of the accomplishments for 2012 and 13. As I reported to you last a couple council meetings ago, we added 3 citizens on patrol. We anticipate adding 2 more. We have one which is actually a Supreme Court judge that wants to volunteer to be a COP member. And yeah,
go through the background check.
Yeah,
Fingerprinted.
judge and jury right on the street. But you know, he brings a lot of experience to the table, and we really look forward to bringing him on board. We have another individual that's in the middle of doing backgrounds. We completed our website. It should go live in June. I'm sitting down with my staff tomorrow to look at the rough draft per se, trying to iron some of that out. So hopefully either in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to go live with that. So it's really a facelift to the department, to the city, and kind of incorporates the rejuvenation that the city's underwent recently. We want to be a part of that growth. We consolidated the substations. As you know, that was a cost-saving measure that we undertook with the city to do our part as a police department to help out. With the fire department, they allowed us to house a computer in the CDF station on Adams, and as you all know, we're out here in the city hall. So that's actually worked out pretty well, and that's, if my numbers are correct, about $120,000 savings annually. So. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is CompStat. That's, you know, we're facing a lot of challenges in law enforcement. CompStat it's not the end all to everything, but it's a new tool that we're using. And just to break it down briefly for you, we get together, and I actually head up this meeting. We get together, myself, the sergeants that run the various special enforcement teams, investigations, the crime analysis. We're all in the same room. And we look at data as far as breaking it down by beat, each individual city and each individual beat. Find out what is going on in what area, what times of the day, what days of the week. And with that information, I'm able to direct the La Quinta resources to specific areas of the city to deal with a specific problem. Whereas in the past, we typically would go off of what the officer knows. Hey, there's a lot of cars being stolen over here. Well, that might be one officer's knowledge of what's going on, but the big picture of what we're actually seeing the line staff, the patrol officers taking in daily as far as reports and where they're happening, that may not have been passed on, but it's captured in this CompStat reporting. So we're using that. Again, we're into about 9 months of that. We're looking to expand that into some of the metal theft that's been going on. So we're really looking at that as a tool to help us combat crime a little bit better. Next slide. Again, what we're talking about with the increasing citizens on patrol, we've been brainstorming, myself and my staff, on how can we reach out to get more volunteers. And I was amazed at some of the the ideas that were coming up. We got a flyer that's made. We got Facebook tag that's going to go on there. We're going to get on Twitter here pretty quick. We've contacted some radio stations for public service announcements, considering commercials. The other thing that was brought up by one of our CSOs was when we're doing our HOA meetings, start recruiting at that level, or even at some, like the city picnic, not only just handing out trinkets, be there actively trying to recruit people. So we're be kicking that off here pretty quick, and hopefully, I know it's probably a bad time to start it in the summer, but we want to get people all year round. You know, some of our volunteers are part-timers, but we'll take whatever we can get at this point. The other thing that we may talk about later on is increasing community service officers. That's up for consideration. And then finally, crime prevention to address the AB 109 alignment. Again, that's that big problem that we're all facing, and as a department, it's our job to look at how do we fight that. The biggest problem with that I see personally is we don't have space to put these people that we arrest. So where do you address that? And you know, my stance is you address that with the citizens. We go and we educate the citizens on how to protect themselves, how to take things into their own hands by doing crime prevention presentations, showing them that, hey, you know, part of the problem is if you're leaving stuff inside your car. If you don't have that opportunity there for the bad guy, that guy keeps moving on down the road. And that's the idea, is to keep pushing that problem somewhere else, get it out of our area. We don't have the space to hold them, but we have an opportunity to educate our citizens. So that's what we're looking at. That HOA meetings, social media sources, that's something with the Go report. I think that's what it's called. Go requests. I wanted to implement that with our volunteers and some of the different things while they're out there driving around. And again, maybe that's something that we can incorporate for our citizens to report, you know, other, obviously non-emergency type crimes, so we can do a better job. And with that, I'll turn it over to my counterpart, Jody, with the fires.
Good evening. I'm here to go over the fire department report. Our costs show $185,751, and these labor costs are due to increases in the fire engine use agreement and other equipment costs. I wanted to go over that. The fire department cost does not come from the general fund. It comes from the structure fire tax and the pass-throughs. Next slide, please. I don't know who's doing the slides. Accomplishments in 12-13, one of the things that we did that Matt just said was we've opened up the station to help provide a location, and it's working out very well. It's nice to have that presence there, and it helps us get to know who we're dealing with when we go on assaults and traffic collisions and such. Some of the things we did.
Terrific.
Yeah, it's working out very well. Some of the things we did at our Station 70, which was one of our oldest fire stations, is replace 16 of their old bay lights, made them energy efficient, took out a big portion of the lawn, I guess their lawn's like 2 acres or something, and put in the water efficient plants, which saves on the monthly bills. We'd like to continue to look at different ideas to help with that in the future. One of the things we got for the equipment, which is huge, is upgraded to our mobile data computers, which we call MDCs, which these are critical for routing us to the calls. In the old days, we'd look up the calls in the Thomas Brothers, and they said, well, what's that cross street? And you're looking it up, and I don't know if you've noticed, but Thomas Brothers pages keep getting smaller and smaller. And the writing, and at night, when you just jumped out of bed, it's really hard to see. So that's one of the critical things that it does for us. Another thing that it does to us, it helps us manage large-scale incidents. You can see where your equipment is. It's accountability. So if you've lost a piece of equipment, a way that I've used it recently is I got dispatched to Palm Desert to a mobile home park. Well, I don't have mobile home park numbers in my car for Palm Desert. So what I did, I looked up the engine, saw what it was at, and I routed myself to it. DPA, we have a lot of Indian lands out here. I can put my car where the fire is, you know, on the street right next to it, and find out the direct protection, you know, whose jurisdiction is it. And then I know to notify them to come out and replace me, give me federal units to fight this fire because it's actually a Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service land. Next slide. One of the things we're going forward to is we're going to continue to provide specialized fire training. As we grow as a fire department, we encompass all risks. That means that we just don't do medical aids, we just don't do fires. We do traffic collision cut and rescues, we do trench rescues, we do hazardous materials. We have alternative fuel vehicles out there now that we need to know how to deal with them. Buses come through here, semis, multi-casualty incidents, you know, the airports and different things, of plane crashes. So we need to go forward and keep, as far as the medical also, we have paramedics on our units in the city, and we're always upgrading, and the new technologies, new policies and procedures. So we're going to go forward making sure everybody's trained to the highest level so we can give the city the best care and expertise that we can. The stations, some of the stations need a little facelift with minor things as far as recliners, beds, that kind of thing that, you know, needs to be replaced every 5-6 years. I know Station 70, we're going to try to get them some new blinds this year because they're falling off the walls. And again, that's our oldest station. Station 32, we have no issues. I mean, it's beautiful, and I want to move there because it's nicer than my house. One of the things that we want to research that I'm really pushing for this next year is to put carbon monoxide monitors on each of the engines. As you know, there was a bill that was passed July 1st, 2011, it's Senate Bill 183, to have carbon monoxide detectors in every home. Well, that kind of caused an issue for us because we get calls, and how do you know if it's the real one or not? It's tasteless, odorless, or on the other hand, somebody calls you with flu-like symptoms. And you just leave. There's no way for us to validate that, yeah, there is a carbon monoxide leak. And these monitors allow us to go in and see that they do or do not meet the acceptable levels to be hazardous. So that's something that we're going to go forward to, along with other specialized equipment that we're constantly looking at and upgrading for our engines and equipment.
What does one of those monitors run?
There's different levels. The ones that I'm looking for are very basic. We have a hazmat unit that's in right next door that we can call, but it's cumbersome, especially like when the people come back after the summer months and they start using turning on everything and stuff. We get a lot of these calls. So mine is going to be a couple $100 per unit. The hazmat unit over there has one that is much more advanced and can do multiple chemicals. So if it's something that we're on the, our monitors aren't able to detect or something, we will go for that. And there's also a fee, I think a yearly fee for recalibrating them, but it's very minimal.
Where is over there?
I'm sorry. Station 81, which is
over there.
Over there. The technical term is over there. I don't know. This is Chief Cooley. Chief Cooley is the deputy chief, and he used to be the battalion chief for La Quinta. And because I just started a few months ago, I knew that there'd be questions that I couldn't ask, so he's gladly offered to help me out.
Yeah, we'll point north. Station 81 is on Washington Street, north side of the freeway across from Sun City. You may have driven past it as you go over there.
Okay,
That's
so
where hazmat
that is where our hazmat unit is, correct.
So it's actually over there.
Yeah, it's a double over there.
Yeah, it's a double over there. Okay.
Sorry about that. So now I'll turn it over to Les.
Just excuse me, Les, just a comment on that. We're very proud of our police and fire department. They do a wonderful job, and I know that over the past years, whenever you needed something, you got it. You got it from us because we wanted to give you whatever you needed to do your job. I guess where I've got a concern as we look at in our material a pie chart, and I can remember when the police fire department was around 35–40%. Now we're looking at 55%, and that blue line is going around. And I concern myself as how far along is that blue line going to go? And these are expenses that we need to deal with. And if we're not getting the revenues coming in to cover these expenses, and I understand where a lot of this cost is coming from because of contractual agreements that you have. But I guess my concern is, how far is that line going to go up, and how much is it going to affect us? And unless we find ways to bring in more revenue to cover expenses, we're going to have a problem down the road. And the last thing I want to do is reduce the numbers of officers that we have out there, and that you just don't want to do that. You want to cover it. And we rely on you to tell us what you need, and we provide what you need. And I take that as gospel as far as I'm concerned. If you tell me you need so many officers, we make sure you got those to do your job. And that. But understand that as you look along as to what's happening with the economy and that blue line keeps going up and it squishes the other areas, how far does it go? So it's you know, it's a concern, because I can remember way back when, and so it's something that you need to pass on to people like Mr. Stan Sniff and say that there is a concern down the road. You know, we're not talking about tomorrow, we're talking maybe 10 years from now. Good, thank you.
Just real quick, Mayor. It was passed down to me about a week and a half ago. The sheriff is willing to come down to discuss items such as that. He can get into a lot more intimate details and specifically about that contract. So that was something that we were going to gauge based upon some of the comments, and obviously there's concerns.
I'm sure we're not alone.
No, I absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
Love to hear from him, because I was going to echo those comments here later when you guys are all
Yeah,
done.
he's actually made it around a couple of different contract cities.
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
well, while you're there, do you know what the number of officers that we currently have on staff and the number of officers that we had 10 years ago? I mean, because when we had a reason to grow the officers, that's what grew the budget in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I actually
and
have
it says the city grew, we had to grow the department. Oh, you got help coming up behind you.
Reinforcement.
Look out, the big guys there.
Senior management is coming in.
Matt's perfectly capable of answering all these questions. I know. I just wanted, I'm not sure what the ratio was back 10 years ago. I am pretty confident that, oh, Matt has it right here.
And what are you looking for, the total numbers back in?
Well, I'm just looking to see, you know, the department has grown.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the budget has grown.
Right.
2000, there was 17 patrol officers in La Quinta. Now we have 31.
Oh, well,
So
that tells you something.
the city's definitely added resources over the past.
We gave you what you wanted.
Exactly.
Well,
But the problem is, it's the revenues and expenses, and as they squeeze up, you know, where does it put the city? And like I say, it isn't our position to want to reduce staff, but how do we make up the difference? And it's a concern down the road as to the direction.
Absolutely. The sheriff and the sheriff's department, we all understand the dilemma that cities are facing, and we appreciate the fact that the city of La Quinta is spending 55% of its budget on public safety. Going back to the mission statement of the city, you know, right in there.
Number one priority.
Number one is public safety.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
the city's not alone. You're right. Moreno Valley's looking at potentially cutting $25 million out of its budget and laying off a significant, I'm sorry, 25 officers out of its budget.
Wow.
And so
are they a
the
contract
city's
city?
they're a contract city.
Yeah.
There are,
How many do they have?
you know, I'm not sure of the total ratio. I think they staff about twice the number of officers.
Aren't all five of the
out
council
here.
members?
Beg your pardon?
Aren't all five of the council members having some problems right now?
I read that in paper. Yes, I read that in the paper myself.
Didn't want to bring that up.
But I mean, as has been stated here, once that public safety breaks that 50% mark, that is a huge mark to break. Huge mark. Every single city in this state that's got financial difficulties, that percentage is substantial, whether it's 60, 70, 80, 90%. So once now that we've reached this 55%, that is a huge mark for our city. And we've gone from 35% of the budget to 45%, now to 55%.
Yeah.
And there's substantial increases here. And hopefully we're not losing any staff members on the Sheriff's Department with this new budget. But, you know, I have some questions within this, but just please appreciate where we are now that you guys have broken that 50% mark and now 55%. If we're sitting here next year and it's 60 to 65, we will have to make some drastic changes.
Yeah.
And so we're now on the other side, so to speak.
Yeah, we understand that 100%. What Matt said and the sheriff will, readily echoes. The government code and county board policy prevent the sheriff's department from charging contract cities any more than the actual costs. And so as revenues across the land have declined in government, costs have either leveled out or increased. And as Matt alluded to, all the bargaining units in the sheriff's department recently negotiated new contracts with the Board of Supervisors, and most of those entities took cuts. The RSA got imposed upon for over a year, and then once those cuts were implemented, they renegotiated new long-term contracts, either 3 or 4 year contracts, and with those contracts come additional cuts to their employee contribution, as well as some marginal cost of living increases
Now, they
to
kick
offset
in
those.
about another year, don't they?
Beg your pardon?
Don't they kick in about another year?
The COLA or
Yeah.
the
Well,
the employee paid?
The increased costs into the health care and retirement system.
Yeah, it depends on the bargaining unit, but some of them are phased in over a process of 3 years, and some of them have already
So
sort of
we'll see
clicked in.
that, but not right now.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But like what I'm getting at is there are some increases that are built in down the road. So the sheriff's definitely sensitive to the fact that contract cities are facing significant challenges with regard to the sheriff budget. And we're definitely here to work with the city manager and the council to provide the resources that cities can afford and that cities desire. So next fiscal year or down the road, if there are additional cuts that need to be considered, then we certainly will work with the council and the city manager to make the best recommendation we can with regard to, if we're going to cut, where can we, where's the least worst place to cut. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Les?
Honorable Mayor, council members, I first need to start off by maybe reintroducing you to the new Community Development Department, so hopefully explain this slide. As you know, as part of the reorganization that occurred and the approval of the reorganization back in January, we consolidated the planning and building and safety departments, as well as added additional responsibilities to the new Community Development Department, which is different from the former Community Development Department, you may recall, from 6 or 7 years ago, which was a planning-focused department with redevelopment oversight. Now, the new department has the functions of building, planning, animal control, code compliance, housing, emergency services, and also assist the city manager's office on economic development matters. So in looking at this slide with regards to the fiscal year 12-13 budget, that represents basically the planning department budget. It was an additional $1.9 million for the building and safety department. So if you combine those two, it's actually about a $600,000 savings going forward when you're comparing apples to apples for this next year. So we're not asking for a $1.4 million increase for the community development department. I just briefly cover those new responsibilities. There's 19 of us in that department. We're a very excited department. There's a lot of change. Everybody in that department has experienced a significant amount of change, and they're very engaged and excited about the future. Next slide, please. Just quickly, some of the accomplishments that occurred this past fiscal year. Obviously, the biggest one that's near and dear to me is the general plan update. We were certainly glad to see that finally wrap up. I'd like to say that it's over, but the implementation of that general plan effort is exactly. Implementation is ongoing. We're on to the next chapter with that, but we certainly felt that was a pivotal milestone approval and for that document. And like I said, we're very much excited about implementing that and going forward with it. Another accomplishment that occurred with the reorganization effort is a different approach with code compliance. We're now in a reactive mode with having 4 what we call slash officers, or animal code officers, and supervisor, and using the go request efforts. So far, I think it's been quite a successful effort, and again, it's a reactive mode for the most part, except for life safety related matters. And so far, the feedback we're receiving from the community has been a positive one, and the officers are very supportive of that effort so far as well.
Speaking of code of compliance, are you going to be able to handle one of our distinguished residents' problem?
But which distinguished residents are?
You and Greg?
We're working on
And
that
Skip?
one. Yes, we're certainly working on that one, absolutely. Just wanted to make sure that was the one we were talking about.
Oh, yes. Before he bugs me again.
Yes. A third key item is you'll recall which is an ongoing item, but we made, I think, a very important revision to our sign ordinance for our business community in providing some additional opportunities with the A-board signs that you may have seen at various businesses, as well as allowing for banners, which historically were not allowed except for grand openings, so there's a process for that as well, and even for some displays to occur out in front of businesses as well. We think that was a great positive contribution to the business community, and it seems to be working quite well. So we thought that was definitely a significant accomplishment this last fiscal year. Going forward with regards to highlights, we have a fairly ambitious plan ahead of us, but there are 3 key items I wanted to bring forward for you this evening. First is the creation of a one-stop permit center. I'd like to mention, first of all, we've already started that. If you've been in City Hall and walked around what I call the horseshoe, you've probably noticed that there's a big gap of staff in one area. That's the former planning department. Everybody has been consolidated into what was formerly the building and safety department. So all 19 staff are in that area, which would be the east wing or the bottom of the horseshoe. And we are currently in a process of conducting an assessment of the spatial needs going forward for the Community Development Department and for the successful implementation of physically of the permit center. So there'll be more to come on that as we move forward with that, but we certainly are making the best out of the situation of bringing everybody together into one area. And we are currently with 3 permit technicians functioning as a one-stop permit center. There's definitely more to come with that. The second bullet with the implementation of the new permit software, we see it as a key issue for permit tracking. First and foremost, on a selfish standpoint, internally, and our ability to communicate between the departments and with particular agencies that we work with on a regular basis. That electronic ability to transfer data back and forth and communicate through permit tracking software will be a significant improvement in communication amongst all of us. We also see a great benefit to the customer for a couple of reasons. One, we're hoping to have the ability to be web-based so that people can access we're hoping, and we're still going through this process, but our desire is to be able to allow for those that have applied to actually be able to get into the system and to be able to view what's happening with the processing of their permits. We're also hoping to be able to implement electronic submittal of applications as well. We have interviewed a few software companies as well as talked with a few communities that have gone almost 100% electronic, meaning that all of the plans, be it building, engineering, so on and so forth, are all coming in digitally, and the ability for us to review, process, and communicate with the customer will be a significant improvement as well.
If we could stay with the highlights, because we're starting to get a little bit long.
That's the problem with going at the end. Third is animal control after-hours assistance. We are looking to have assistance from Riverside County Animal Control to assist us. We are a 24/7 animal control city, and we're hoping to have the county to be able to contract with them to assist us after hours and on Sundays. We think that would be of benefit to handle those after-hour moments when it's an urgent matter, as we do now, and we think that would be a great opportunity to give our 5 animal officers that opportunity to be able to focus on 6 days a week versus 24/7, 7 days a week. With that, I'll pass it over to Public Works.
Public Works, we are showing a reduction of $434,000 this year, largely by some staff reductions, some efficiencies. I think the public's getting used finally to street sweeping every other week. We pulled back the contract for North La Quinta, and we're doing that ourselves. We've also, but by and large, a lot of the budget shift that you see here, I was concerned, as maybe you were, that Public Works is only 7% of the general fund budget, but that's because we've moved parts of it to other pots, as the city manager alluded to. The payment management plan, for instance, now is shown entirely inside of the CIP. We've also included $235,000 of street maintenance for signals to be paid for by Measure A. So there's an example, and that's also in the CIP document that we went over last time. So that's an example of where we're able to offset general fund costs by the fact that now we're in TUMF and we're collecting Measure A. In addition, this budget, the $2.4 million, has already had the reimbursements removed from it for both the L&L district as well as the gas tax. So that was about $2.2 million. As far as accomplishments, as I mentioned, joining Measure A and gaining that sales tax that provides is a huge step in terms of securing street maintenance as well as street improvements going forward for the city. So I applaud the council and their direction on that to move forward. That was about a 3-year endeavor, and so we were glad to join Measure A and join the TUMF program. We also were able to update the 1996 fee schedule this year, which was a huge step, I felt, in going forward and collecting more of the city's costs that it needs to provide the services to developers and their engineers that we provide. Everybody's already taken credit for Go requests, so I won't mention much more here, other than that we've got 2,000 requests since February and counting. So people, unfortunately, I can't track exactly who has the app by zip code. Otherwise, I could tell you exactly what percentage of the city has that, but I'm working on that. We updated the 5-year, or with the council's approval, we updated the 5-year payment management plan this year, so we're good to go through 2017, allocating $1 million, again, for street maintenance. And then the Lighting and Landscape District, I might be the only one up here that believes that we still have an opportunity to work with the North La Quinta subdivisions in getting them to take on at least part of their cost. We've had meetings with the Rancho Ocotillo folks, and we're scheduling one with Cactus Flower. Nobody's thrown us out of the room yet, so they're still listening to us. So more on that to come, but at least we've taken the first step and started a dialogue with them.
Good.
Yeah. Highlights what we're looking forward to next year. We're in support of community development. We're working closely with them on the one-stop shop that Les mentioned previously. We're always on the lookout for, right after street surface quality, the next thing we look at are the streets draining. And so we've undertaken a number of projects recently. Washington drains a lot better. If you haven't noticed, it doesn't rain that often, so maybe you haven't noticed. But in working with the church, we created we worked with them on their catch basin, and then we built the new retention area inside of the median in front of St. Francis of Assisi Then over at 48th and Jefferson, we improved that basin, actually just returned it to what the original design was, so that intersection drains better, and we'll continue to look for the ability to do more drainage improvements. Citywide pavement rehab project is going to start coming up. We've awarded a design for that for parts of Washington, south of Tampico, parts of Tampico, and then Avenue 52, so that's up and coming. The ADA improvements to some of our parks facilities, to the library and so forth, those will be constructed this year, and then we'll move on to other facilities to start designing those handicap improvements to bring them up to current codes. And then finally, I'll leave you with, it's been a while since we worked on Washington 111, so we'll be back out there late summer, early fall, adding.
Not at Thanksgiving.
No, I've already given him that instruction. I told him Councilman Henderson will be watching us closely. But the plan there, of course, is to add the triple lefts now to north and southbound Washington, and additional right turn lanes coming from the east and west approaches. And so that project is going to be another grand undertaking, but in order to provide future traffic capacity that's necessary. And I'll turn
Tim,
it
let me
back
ask you, on the Jefferson Street, from, the first lights over there off of Avenue 52, I guess, all the way up to Fred Waring, are those lights synchronized?
No.
Well,
I drive it all the
I'm sorry,
time.
from
Yeah, me too, that's why.
52 to where? To
From Avenue, I believe
all the way to
Avenue,
the Fred-
well, the first ones, I guess.
That's a
out in front of me.
challenge because, unfortunately, we have a little bit of a professional disagreement between the two traffic engineers, and we coordinate that.
You mean between India?
Yeah,
and
between
Lakeland?
our system and their system. They are coordinated, but it doesn't always reflect that, because one city tweaks it one way and the other one tweaks it the other way, and then we meet and usually are able to reconcile it. But yeah, we have some challenges on Jefferson
You
Street.
normally can make it if you violate the speed limit.
Oh, is that what the secret is?
There you go, slower, you're not supposed to, huh?
He drives a big red Tahoe. I saw him earlier.
But what you're saying, Tim, is there's a whole lot of tweaking going on.
There are.
Isn't that cute?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll turn.
So I wanted to take just a second to talk about all the other funds of the city, and basically the revenues and expenditures are flat for the current year, but I did want to mention a couple things. We're proposing in this budget to use $3.6 million of Quimby reserves for facility upgrades and ADA improvements. Also wanted to mention the Measure A new funding source of $803,500 for the year. And then in addition to that, we're asking for $850,000 in information technology upgrades. And I'll turn it over to Chris Escobedo, Assistant to City Manager, to briefly discuss that.
Thank you, Robin. So the word future has been used several times this evening, and this $850,000 is all about the future in the form of strategic investments in our technology, in training, and in our organization. So we've developed internally the framework and a working plan to lead us to this number and the pathway to get there. So in the very near future, we'll be issuing an RFP to get it on the street with the hopes of we will get, an IT vendor that will bring back forward to you for consideration and review. In the IT vendor, what we're looking for is a vendor who will provide robust technology systems and options in order to make concerted improvements in our technology systems here. So the way this number breaks down is we have dedicated funding for our finance, HR, and payroll systems on one track, as well as our permitting and inspection systems on another track, as well as making investments in our server technology and our server systems to support the capacity of the road we're going down. In order to do so, we've also established the internal working teams to get us there. And we've established the January 1, 2014 deadline of moving on to our new finance, HR, payroll system, and a February 2014 deadline of launching our permitting systems as well. So we're very excited about these improvements. They're going to go a long way in retooling our workforce and enhancing our operations. And with that, I'll turn it back on over.
So this next slide shows items that we mentioned before that we are issuing a flat budget. However, there were certain items that we needed to add in, and these items on this list, and I'm not going to go over all of them, but they have been incorporated into the document that you have before you tonight. In addition to that, this next slide shows our community contributions, and again, I'm not going to go over every single one of these items. I just want to let you know that they are in the budget at $671,000 plus dollars. That's the same amount of funding as was last year, and I just want to make sure that you realize that it is in the current document. This next item, in addition to the items that I've already said are in the budget, we've had 5 requests for additional items that are not incorporated into this document. So there was some talk about adding CSOs. That was a cost of $300,000. There's a water conservation program that we would partner with CVWD for $110,000, and the chamber is asking for an additional $32,500. We have Desert Paws at $25,000 and Patriot Ride at $10,000. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the city manager.
Well, we're finally closing, and basically, as we put in the budget message, we do have issues on the horizon. With the decision tonight about Silver Rock, we're going to be looking for how we can put the money aside. That'd be $750,000. So when we talk about our surplus, one of the aspects that we will be looking at is setting aside funds all at once, unless we're guided otherwise, to cover the operational cost deficits that we're looking at Silver Rock given the parallel canal alignment. In addition, as we've laid out, we're going to be anticipating going forward, not this year, but going forward, our PERS increases. It's the employer contribution based upon the existing contracts, not any future contracts. PERS is trying to reset their pension fund, given the fact they've had lower earnings coming in and others. And so they alerted us to the fact that I think next year our number is about $822,000. By fiscal year 1920, it'll be $2.3 million that this city will need to pay. In addition, we're working forward with the notice of completion, or trying to get that from the Department of Finance. That puts $41 million of our existing reserves in jeopardy. That's money we have here. I've been asked that a lot. Yes, it's money we have. But if that goes, then we'll be down to roughly $23 million of liquid reserves. As we've stated, we have aging infrastructure that we need to deal with. One of the reasons why it's warm in here right now is that our air conditioner system up here is on its last legs. That's going to be a $50,000 investment, and we're going out with a bid process here at the next meeting. The thought is to replace it this summer. We have 2 more units sitting on the other side of the building. Those are $50,000 a piece too. They've been in service since 1993, and so they're at the end of their useful life, and we have other situations like that in our community. And then finally, it's kind of a broken record, but again, we have no dedicated funding to support Tim's Habits and do additional capital improvement programs. As we went through the CIP budget the last go-around, we have something like $19 million of CIPs plus carryover funds. Starting next fiscal year and going forward, that's going to drop to $1.5 million a year. And a large part of that is the pavement management program. So we're in the pursuit to see how we can finish that. In close, here's the timeline for our budget. We have the opportunity for additional review at your pleasure, or the community's pleasure, on June 4th. We have tentatively in our scheduling have set June 18th at the time for budget adoption. And then this budget would go into effect on July 1st. And with that, we'd like to collectively thank you for your time and open it up for questions.
Good. Thanks, Frank. Comments, questions?
Well,
Where do you want to start, Mr. Mayor?
I don't care. Christie, start us off.
There you go.
in looking at the budget, first of all, as I said to Robin earlier, this is such an improvement in terms of readability, being able to get through it, to understand it. Just a great job by Robin and everyone who helped you. I know Chris and Amy and all of your staff were involved, but it's good for someone who's not a CPA. But most of the questions, actually all the questions I had, I went over with Frank during our meeting, so I'm good. It's just great to be able to have something like this that's not. It really is. It's wonderful. Good job.
Okay, Lee?
Thank you. Questions? Well, the first question I've already asked with the Sheriff's Department, that we're not losing anyone on this year's budget. Thank you. And I've already stressed the aspect of the percentage of our budget. A question I had, whether it be Robin or Edie, last year we funded $50,000 to go to Martha's Village on their construction project. And from what I understand, they never followed through with that construction project for whatever reason. So that $50,000 is still sitting in the budget, I would imagine, from last year?
That's correct. They had requested the money, and it had been appropriated for $50,000 for a food storage facility. We heard from them recently. I contacted them to find out the status and if they thought they were going to be able to get that job done, and they indicated to me that they would not be able to do that. So the way that reads is that money would go back into the general fund reserves unless you wanted to use it for another purpose.
Well, I would like to ask the council to consider that $50,000 going to the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission, the homeless center.
Only to them?
Yes.
No, but yeah, I think because the clarity that maybe Linda's looking for is the contributions, the $100,000, which was 50 each, went to capital improvements.
Yes.
And see, Coachella Housing put theirs to capital, their new building, and now Martha's hasn't. So now you're saying that 50 that would go back to the general fund to go to Coachella Valley Housing as operating?
Coachella Valley Rescue Mission.
Rescue Mission.
Right.
But to what category?
To go to their operations.
Because I'm sure Martha's Village could use
Operations, yeah, that's the difference.
The thing is, I mean, as you guys all know, and regarding the homelessness center and what they've done with Roy's, we have yet to support any operating funds. I understand about the capital aspect that our city has taken for many, many years. But from an operational standpoint, if we've got that $50,000, and if we want to split it between Martha's Village and CV Rescue Mission, CV Rescue Mission has the premier program for the homeless in the valley.
It does.
And they have the most successful homeless program, getting those people out of homelessness, getting them a job, getting them training, so they can return back to their feet. And as you may know, Martha's Village has closed their homeless aspect. Right now, they've got their meals that they're doing. The gentleman that was before us last year has retired with Martha's. And so, from an aspect of homelessness, Coachella Valley Rescue Mission really is the premier. And they're the ones that affect our citizens that are homeless here in La Quinta. And we do have homeless, as you guys know, and as you've seen in our community. So that's just something I wanted to throw out at you guys to see what you guys think about this. I am well aware that it would be a first from an operational expenditure versus a capital expenditure. But I think it's something that it's about time for our city to do. And so
that's what I've been saying for the last 2 years, that we've been claiming to help.
And so if we've got that $50,000 that wasn't used by Martha's, for their capital program, and you guys feel we can help CV Rescue Mission from an operational standpoint, I'd like to ask you to consider that. The questions, though, I've got a number of comments. As you all are well aware, I'm still very challenged with the $3 million going into the senior center. The Station 93 and police that are using that, great job. I think that is really awesome. And that's, I think, a big part of where we're going in the future is partnerships. You know, partnerships with you guys, partnerships with us as a school district, partnerships with a recreation district, partnership for everybody to be able to do what we need with less funds. And what the voice or the decision that was made today regarding Silver Rock and the canal, I can well appreciate your votes on that, and I respect that 100%. But I would hate to see our city take a position going into the future that we're not at the level that we have been over the last, what, we're 30 years old now, that we've always had the utmost in quality, whatever it is, whether it be our staff, and you guys are doing a great job, it's a great report has been stated, but also the development within our city, that we maintain that level of quality. And I see some challenge there, especially if public safety goes over 50%, but I've already said that. But the budget in itself, I think, Robin, you guys did a great job. And it is much more readable. I mean, we've got here, this was one size of one of the 2 books that we used to have in the past. So it's made it a lot easier for us to review. Questions? Yeah, another question. I brought this up years ago when I was previously on the council, and that is regarding a professional money manager. We talked about using a professional money manager years ago, and John Faulkner at that time did not want to have a professional money manager. He thought he was taking care of things, and I'm not saying he wasn't. But I think, you know, I don't know where Robin thinks about using a professional money manager going into the future, while maintaining our priorities for principal, of course, is the #1 issue, and that will always be the #1 issue. I can respect, you know, I mean, that's got to be where it is. But I would ask that we consider a professional money manager going into the future with approximately the $150 million we have in the bank and our numerous reserve, you know, funds.
Are you talking like Merrill Lynch, Morgan
Yes.
Stanley?
Yes. And perhaps we can direct our investment advisory board to look at this and let them talk about it.
That's what I'd like to see.
And maybe they want to interview a couple of groups out there and bring
Well,
something back to us in the future if we want to have them look at it.
And how many types of
Right.
investments we can
Right.
make. So let's find out from them if they feel like they already have.
And if you guys are good with that, I'd like to ask that that direction go
Yeah, I
to the
think
investment
so.
advisory board,
Yeah.
that they can look at that matter. I want to commend staff as well of being more user-friendly. You guys really, with putting all this permit department into one desk, and what, you know, we're doing in a number of departments, we're making it much more user-friendly for the citizens here in La Quinta, and I think you guys are doing a great job. You know, first go around on this, I was rather concerned about our economic development budget, but after, you know, understanding what our city manager's done by spreading that out into the different departments, I can appreciate, you know, what you're doing with that. Just looking at it from the budget book standpoint, it all was zeros. So that was a real concern at one point. Our parks and the youth facilities. Within the challenges that we have within our budget on maintaining our parks, and not just maintaining them, but improving them, and making whether our sports facility or baseball or soccer, whatever it is for these kids, to make it what it should be. Maybe it's out of our budget now, I don't know. But if it is out of our budget, maybe we really need to look hard at, again, partnering with the community. We talked a little bit about adopt-a-parks, you know, when we talked, you know, no more reseeding and some of these other things. If we're going to look at the needs of some of these parks for the youth, and it's not in our budget, then perhaps we can really put together a program for whether it be Adopt-A-Park or just talk to other community groups out here in the city, whether it be Rotary or the Lions Club or the high school or whoever it may be, to get more from the community to help us to bring up these parks for these kids. And you know, we talked about it a little bit, but maybe, you know, within the Community Service Board Commission, maybe they can talk a little bit more about putting together more of a real program for Adopt-A-Park, so these kids have, again, the ballparks and the soccer fields, and the facilities that go with it. You know, the little building in North that has the you know, that they can sell a hamburger to the kids or the chips or whatever. They got them in both of the baseball parks, you know, and to help those facilities. And we can't go cheap. We got to keep our priority and our quality the way we always have. And though you guys have done a heck of a job bringing our budget down within, you know, within the black. I mean, it's awesome to be in the black again. And you know, we'll talk about these other requests out there. I certainly don't want to lose all of it, or I shouldn't say that. I certainly don't want to spend all of it in one night. You know, we finally got us back in the black, and we're going to have a little bit to go back in the reserves again. And some of these bear discussions, some of them will have to wait. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Terry?
Well, I too appreciate the rewrite of the budget, maybe not as much as everyone else, because I've had 18 years of the old document that I was really used to. So I had to get really used to this one, and so it might have been a bigger challenge for me than some other folks. And the fact that the supporting documents actually wasn't along with the budget the same day presented a challenge for me. So anyway, I got there. But I'd like to kind of go over a couple of little things that I bumped in along the way. So maybe if you could follow me with the budget. On page 5, I'm wondering, and I'll wait for you to get there, I'm wondering if that in fact couldn't have had one more column, and maybe it would have taken or been the place for a figure, because we're showing revenues and all, and every department that we're showing revenue, we have expenses way over those revenues. So we need an other funds column, which would go back to kind of where Tim was talking about with his department. He's kind of 7% on the pie, but has got some over here and some over there and some over here, and so it's, and I'm thinking on the individual staff department budgets, you ought to have one more line that says source funds from other sources X, and then have a true budget that is the public works, the building, and the community services, and et cetera. Because that's kind of what was missing for me in this document. Then on page, well, I wrote down page 12. Let's find out why. Oh, and we partially had this discussion last year on the additional property tax that we received last year, and then we discussed, it was with you, right? Wasn't it? Who was it last year? No. Well, somewhere, maybe mid-year budget, we might have talked about the additional property tax that we received because of shifting that the governor did, and would determine that that would be an ongoing receipt. Well, and on page 12, that's reflected, and I actually thought that that would be an increase in property tax and not the no-low property tax. So, was I wrong there? Did that increase go in the no-low?
As well, it did, if you're looking back and forth at the numbers, but the reason that I adjusted some of the numbers up and down is because of the way it's coming in currently.
Okay, so you think it's...
I think it was property tax, but I can check that.
Okay, so, because it's interesting, I mean, a lot of folks may not care about that, but when I've talked about the very few dollars the city has gotten in property tax for many years, and also that our no-low property tax figure was peanuts. And now suddenly the peanuts have become giant acorns, and the city's property tax is not increasing. Well, obviously it is increasing, and some of that's also because of the property coming out of the RDA, and we're now getting some additional property tax on that. That's general fund. Anyways, that's something that maybe you and I can talk about outside of boring everybody. And then back to the police department. I was pleased to hear you say that you brought on 3 new COPS's, cops, the volunteers.
Yes, ma'am, we got 3 on board now.
3 on board, and then 2 more that are in the process.
One's passed the background, we're waiting for the other one to pass so we can begin training with 2 instead of doing 1 at a time.
Okay, so the 3, would they be considered recruitments for the year 12, 13, or whatever, just a 12-month period
Yeah,
of
I
time?
mean, this really kind of came to a head back in December, and they were already kind of into work, so
Okay.
that was kind of last fiscal year's accomplishment.
Okay, so prior to that, can you recall how long had it been since we had brought on some volunteers?
I don't have those numbers, but I can tell you this, it's slow going.
Yeah.
Talking to Denise, they probably get 3 or 4 requests a year, just people that are interested in volunteering. So hopefully we can, increase those numbers.
Your programs that you talked about doing really sound exciting, and particularly when you're going out and talking to some of the homeowners groups and letting those folks know that if they got, a half hour, 1 day a week, they can certainly help out. So I won't ask the questions I was going to ask because you already brought that up. And then the only other thing might be a CSO. I know that the budget is all showing the potential for 3. There's no reason why we couldn't revisit the potential of 1.
No, I think that was.
I mean,
when-
300,000 is a big jump, and that takes that 55% maybe to 56%. But it is possible to consider 1.
Yeah, 1 is roughly about 95,000.
Yeah.
And I think that question was posed to Captain Schaus the last time we spoke before you, and that was going to basically double our numbers and provide more coverage.
Okay.
So that way that number's out there. Again, that's up for you guys to consider.
Yeah. All right, thank you on that. Okay. Bear with me, folks. I've taken pages out, so that's dangerous. Oh, and I guess I was going to ask about the marketing budget, but it sounds like, Edie, you're bringing back a discussion on that. And,
Yes, and it's the same budget as last year. We didn't make any changes. We didn't add any money to that budget.
You didn't add any
It's-
money, but there will be changes made.
We hope so. We hope that you'll want to do some things we're recommending.
Yeah. Okay, so that's why that one's marked. And then, because it's maybe the elephant in the room, there is the consideration on some of these other requests, and I don't think it's a bad idea to visit some of those now, so that when the budget comes back next time, it doesn't create another long evening. I do think it's going to be a real challenge for me to consider increasing the chambers, or fulfilling the request the chamber has put in this year.
What would you think in regards to the chamber if we just do a portion of it for the 4th of July? I wouldn't, is there 32, but I mean, if we just do like 15,000 for the 4th of July and that's it.
No, because everybody's taken a cut. The staff's taken a cut, the city's taken a cut, everybody's taken a cut. And actually, other than, what we expect with public safety, because it's built in, we know there's going to be an increase there. I can't I just can't. I can't move on raising, you know, and trying to meet their request. They've had a full year to try to, you know, address that problem of sponsors. Thank you. That's a good word, sponsors. It's just, it's a challenge for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't go the whole 32.5 either, but I was hoping we could do something for the 4th of July in itself. I mean, it was such a great success last year. We had so many people there from
There
La
were a
Quinta
lot
at that
of
event.
people there, but what kind of a success was it?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, there were a lot of people there that had a very good time that night. And it was, you know, an expensive evening. And all of the events and all of the things that we fund, we're always looking for some kind of a return on our investment. And, you know, what did the city get out of that event as far as a return on investment? And maybe the community having fun.
There are ROIs that don't necessarily have a dollar figure attached to them.
They're
And that was a huge event for the people in La Quinta, for our city. And other people came from outside of the city too.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't think we just look at the dollar figure. I have a problem with the 32,000 because I think it's an ask after the fact to help them pay for fireworks that they didn't pay for last year. That's my problem with that.
Yeah.
Should we be engaged a little bit in helping with the July 4th? I think so, but not to a large extent.
Well, you know, I might consider that that conversation once I have their full budget in front of
Right,
me.
and we don't.
And see what else can maybe be eliminated from
Right.
their budget.
Right.
And replaced with.
We've never reviewed their budget and approved their budget?
Yeah, every year we do.
do.
Yeah. And they submit it every year.
But we don't approve it. I mean, it's not for us to approve their budget.
Yes, it is. Well, not their, no, their contract.
As chairman, you guys
But their
did-
budget was part of the contract.
Sure, I can
Showing us
appreciate that.
what they did.
Wrong terminology, their
Right.
contract. I'd like to look at their contract and see what's in there, and maybe there's some things in there that can be eliminated. Or
Well,
moved around, or,
of course, the advantage, Terry, we were at Old Town afterwards, before the fireworks.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the restaurants were packed.
well, sure they were.
Yeah, because we ran into Lindo there,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, they were mobbed.
Yeah. Okay, let me see, where else was I?
Terry, do you think in the interest of time that we could talk about this when we have more of the facts in front of us? In other words,
I do.
I need to go with Desert Pause.
I
I don't
do.
even know who that is, and I just think we're getting a little
I
off
do.
track here.
I do.
We still got Linda and Don to get from.
Okay,
All right,
I'm fine with that.
thank you.
Am I on?
Yes.
I can talk fast. Okay, I need Matt. Matt, on police, and I'm looking at the supplemental or supporting documents. You have a few things under other contract services where you mentioned Humana Challenge, Office Traffic Safety, da-da-da. How come Golden Voice isn't in there? Isn't there a component of contract service that includes
They
police
pay us
festivals?
directly.
They pay you directly,
Yeah,
so
they
there's...
contract through the sheriff department, and so again, it doesn't affect the city. The contract is between
Okay.
us and them.
Okay, so the La Quinta Police Volunteers went from a 12,008 to an actual of this year of only 2,000, but it's going back to 12,008. So what's the difference in why we spent money 2 years ago and not this year, but we're planning on spending it next year?
My understanding, there's some of the other items that were associated with the volunteers that we incorporated into that line item. And maybe Chris can elaborate.
Because their events are separate.
Because of past allocations and it not being spent, many of the items within the budget are being moved into the COPS program to support many of the programs that Matt outlined earlier. So while those expenditures weren't in place in prior years, they're being redirected there so that the funding capacity is there to support those programs in the next year.
Okay, so then what would happen, what does the marketing special mailing for 5,000 represent? Because
Well, the way I look at that is that's part of, what we're going to be doing with the volunteers as far as any of that need to market.
So you're up to
costs that
17 or
would be
18,000
associated
now?
with
Okay. The facility fees went up, well, they were 156,000 in 2012-13 with changes, but then popped up to an estimated actual this year of 200,000, and now they're increasing to 214. So is that actually our allocation for the thermal station? Because you mentioned 120,000 in savings on the substation consolidation, but we've got a kick now in the facility piece, unless that's coming from someplace else.
My understanding is part of that is from the Indio station while we were there, and the uptick on that would be the thermal station. I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing on that one. I don't know if the captain can.
I'm looking at Chris, I'm looking at Matt. I'm
And typically,
looking at Andy.
it's the square footage charge for the thermal station, which is a part of the formula retrofit charge of the city. So the majority of that cost should be the thermal station.
The facility fee is a year lag behind, so the city's being charged for part of the Indio station because we moved into the new thermal station mid fiscal year, and so that's why there's a uptick, because we're basically sort of realizing the actual full year time spent at the thermal station.
Okay. So that was the question we were asking last year when we were looking at substation consolidation, is what is our allocation for thermal going to be?
Yeah.
Now we know,
Now it's gonna be
$214,000.
$214,000.
And then just my last one, the sexual assault exam fees. We have not been running anything in that for the last couple of years, but we're adding $10,800. Is that some new responsibility that you're going to have that was originally with SART, or is there special training, or?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
There's
question.
the final line item is sexual assault exam fees.
Right.
For $10,800, and there hasn't been that line item budgeted for the last year or so, couple years.
Apparently that was brought up to us by our A&F department, and from the fact that that's part of the agreement, part of the contractual agreement is covered in there, that those costs be passed along. The way I came up with that is for the last year, since I've been here, you guys are getting billed that, but I wanted to build that into the budget so it wasn't something that it was showing up on your
A
doorstep.
variance, so it's,
Yeah.
okay, no longer variance, okay. That's all I have, thank you. Just a couple.
10% increase in their budget from 2012-13 to 2013-14. That's a 10% increase
But
overall.
that includes a $300,000 on the community service officers.
No, it doesn't.
No,
No. That's
Yeah.
on top of
We
it.
talked about another 1%
Well,
going
we'll
on top.
delegate that to Chris and Frank to tackle. All right.
I thought it was 4.6.
I'm looking at
Thanks,
12,010,000 versus 12,857,000.
Oh, okay, from that
Yeah,
preceding year.
that's all.
The 2 years.
That's all officer increases, et cetera. Just a couple comments I have then, otherwise, I don't, thank you very much.
Okay.
I love the new format as well. One of the things that I always look for in a budget is the variance column, so I can see the immediate highs and lows from prior year, and that, I mean, so I had to like look at every single thing, which is okay, because I do that anyway, but sometimes it's nice to pick out those highlights, because what I do notice is that there was a small creep in training, travel, and what's that category called in everybody? Training, travel, and meetings. So I'm going to assume that that's part of our consultant and staff enhancement in terms of providing extra skill sets and learning opportunities. It wasn't a lot, but every department had a little bit extra in there to kind of just have some flexibility, it appeared. I did notice that. Would you argue with me on that? No, okay. And then I guess lastly, I see that Tim Esser is here, and I imagine that he's part of the Desert Ride crowd. So I am interested in hearing really quickly, if we can, Desert Pause, Patriot Ride, and if the grant program would be an option for them, and would the grant program be an option for a one-time thing of a small amount of no more than $5,000 or something like that for the chamber, because I agree. The La Quinta Arts Foundation, I was going to bring that up, but after their full assessment report that they spent their own $20,000 on to do, we clearly are getting the return on investment for our investment. I was going to propose lowering that, but we clearly have opportunities to further enhance that reputation and brand for the city. The chamber, I have a problem with, but I understand the importance of some of the non-tangibles, but I'm not paying for fireworks that weren't budgeted last year, and I'm not paying for a study that they should do to prove themselves. But if they want to request a grant for 4th of July on a go-forward basis, we have a process to do that. We do. That's all I have. Great job. It's late, I know. Great job. That's all. Yep.
Just for your information, I gave it one of the letters that I got the request for the money to Edie, and I says, send
Grant.
over a grant. Yes, so I support
Same
what
thing,
you're
yeah.
doing.
That's why we have it. And we added a little extra last year to kind of give us some cush, so.
Sure. First of all, let me thank staff for this. This is the best I've seen in all my years here. I enjoy it. I can read it. I understand it. Mine's going to be brief. I support the budget, what you're doing, and great that we're $1 million in the black, and that, I think that's outstanding, and that, I don't want to deplete that. I think there's a couple of issues that we need to deal with on these extra requests. The nickel and dime stuff, I'm not going to worry about the, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. That I'm not worried about, but the big major issues, I think, are things that we have to deal with, and I'm not real supportive of some of this. We dealt with an issue tonight with PACE, working with our citizens regarding working with the utility district, and CVWD, they want 100 and some odd thousand. I'm saying, whoa, wait a second here. Things like that, I'm concerned, because that will deplete this good little bit slush fund that we have, saying, hey, we're in the black this year because of the outstanding work that our staff has done to reduce the cost in that and put us back where we belong in that. So I'm very supportive of it. One thing I will do, and I challenged the city manager, I saw this bar chart on the diff. And I said, for the last 5 years, the economy's bad. We haven't had many permits coming in and that. And this year, we've raised the cost of the impact fees and that. And so we're going to be getting a heck of a lot more money. Yet you've dropped it lower than I've seen in a long time. So I challenge that. I think that maybe we ought to take a look. I'd like to understand how you came up with those figures. Not now, but somewhere. And I challenged Frank on that, and I said, bring it back to me so that I know just how you came up with those figures, especially when we're dealing with major increases in these fees. And it looks like we're getting more and more requests for building permits. There's a lot more activity out there than what there has been in the past. But I know you're very conservative, but it's something that we need to look at. But all in all, thank you for the budget, and that we'll finalize it hopefully by next week or 2 weeks, and we'll go on from there. And that's all I have. Okay. Anything else that needs to be brought up, Linda?
Do we need to figure out how we're directing staff on the 50,000 for Martha's and that change, and whether we should approach both entities and look at a shared process, or at least granting some for one and the other versus giving it all to CV?
If we're going to go from operations to development, then I think that we need to direct that, because I'm concerned that Martha's could say, you pinned us down to construction, and we couldn't do that. Now you're going to take it away and give it to the operating fund and that, and I'm a little concerned
I'd rather
that's
go 50-50.
maybe not fair.
Right.
I know at the homelessness committee coming up in June, because they canceled their meeting in May, I've asked that they bring forth Martha's Village and the rescue mission to give us a report on what they're doing and what their needs are.
Yeah.
They haven't done that in years. It's always been about Roy's. So I sent an email out asking that to come up in June.
Well, I want to be able to say, because I'm challenged all the time at the executive board of CVAG, why we're not supporting Roy's, and I'm saying we support our local homeless and our local charities, and that more so than Roy's, which is in Palm Springs.
Sure.
So I would like to be able to say, no, we are financially supporting Martha's and the rescue mission.
The only thing Lee brought up a good point, and I had forgotten that Martha's had eliminated its homelessness part.
Right.
And if we're trying to fulfill a homeless commitment, are we doing that? I don't know. I don't know whether or not it should be.
I would think that the homeless goes in there to eat.
They do go into
Yeah,
the
so-
That's meals, yeah, they do a lot of meals.
program we're talking about.
Put them in a bed at night, no,
I was
they're
just
not
at
doing
the
that.
rescue mission last night. I participated in a financial class for some of those
I
folks.
thought maybe Nancy got mad.
No, not yet. Thanks for that. But, no, I help a couple other professionals give a financial class to them, and it's helping those people get out of homelessness and get back into a job, get back into financial stability. And that's what the money's about, is to get those people out of homelessness, put them back on their feet, and that's what the rescue mission does, and they do it better than anybody else. I know they've been talking to Roy's on how their programs work, so Roy can try to mimic those same programs. So, again, in regards to homelessness, you got the rescue mission. That's the number one.
Mr. Mayor, may I offer that, given the discussion here tonight, we'll bring back something, I don't know what yet, on June 4th as an interim piece, just say, here's what the impact would be on things with some of these adjustments, and then more information on these particular points. So you can have, I can tell everybody's getting tired, so we'll try to make it in smaller batches, and we can bring that forth on June 4th, and then the final adoption of the budget would be on June 18th. So you can think about things, get in touch with us, and then we'll have another go at it then.
Yeah, I'd just like to have a closing statement for my, on your message in the budget itself, on page Roman numeral 4 at the bottom. I think that it's, those, if you will, warnings, some of them are warnings, some of them are, actual facts. Well, they're all facts. I mean, we are going to be looking at the significant increase in the employer contributions. That's going to continue to grow. And we do have this $750,000 of operation losses. I think we need to, if we're going to budget anything, the reserve, which isn't a reserve yet, it won't be a reserve until next June, so we really don't have that reserve. I won't believe it till next June. We need to figure out how we're gonna fund this 750.
Well, if there's nothing further, we'll move on to reports and informational items, and if we could make these as brief as possible, appreciate it. Linda, you want to start us off?
Okay, so Energy Environmental ratified the decision to do PACE and bring it back to the city since the executive committee had approved it, so that was E&E. Conservation Commission, we are proceeding with an RFP for the bighorn monitoring so that the BI and the Bighorn Institute isn't the ones as we define that, we regrouped. We're on track for purchasing the land and multi-species habitat, updated some contracts there on maintenance, and with CVB, Convention Visitors Bureau, the contract will go to the county for renewal on the tourism bid, which is the added percentage for small hotels and an increase to TOT on the big hotels. So what started out as a proposed 2 to 3% on the big hotels, which is 50 rooms or more, is going to remain what's being proposed for the renewal, but the addition of the 1% for the 50 rooms or less is being put at hold this time. So the extra 1% that they'll get from big hotels will go specifically to all of the tourism and higher-end discretionary consumer marketing outside the normal requirements of the big bid. So the little guys kind of fought back and said they're not ready quite yet for that. So we're holding off until the tourism bid for the big ones launches and they see some return, and then we'll readdress that at another contract renewal. But it's not costing us anything. And occupancy is up in La Quinta, specifically in Valley overall.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. This was a great spring for our city, and hopefully it's an indication of the go forward. They've got some great marketing plans for the shoulder season and summer for the drive market, LA, Orange County, San Diego. So I will bring that up as a possible small increase for CVB marketing, but we can talk about that. That's my
Next would be Christine. Christy, before we start, thank you very much for sitting in, and hopefully you enjoyed it.
I did, especially Sunline. Sunline awarded a 3-year renewal of their contract to the hydrogen generator company that they've worked with for the past 6 years, I believe. There was a letter from College of the Desert with respect to bus passes for the college students, and they would, COD would like to, excuse me, initiate a pilot program with Sunline whereby students at COD have free access to routes that are already established, and it's like a 2-year pilot program. But they're going to bring that back again, and I don't see that's going to happen.
That sets precedents, and that's the problem.
The one issue that I noticed that you had brought up, and that was with respect to members of the board, excuse me, using the attorney for things that probably didn't really need to be used for. Jeff gave us his rates, Goldblum, for non-routine work, it's $220 an hour, and litigation's $265 an hour. And then I made a motion that they agendize that again when you could be there.
Yeah.
And they all thought that was a good idea.
Well, it boils down to board members, just like council members, going ahead and authorizing work to be done without approval and spending money. And some of these people, you know, they've got credit cards and they're using this thing, and then it comes back, and how do you control a budget?
Well, you can't.
And have people spending money, and you know, and I said, there's no way that, and I chair the finance department. I says, I can't accept that.
Right, so they're going to talk about it when you're there next meeting. And I think we've talked about bus service to the North Shore. They have that now.
Yeah.
Then, right before the meeting, Michael was handed a note, if you will, from CVAG with respect to establishing a 90% bus transit, 10% passenger rail service split of the TDA funds. And it was like, as he's walking in the door, so they just said they would work on it and get with everyone. So.
Was that brought up at the executive board of CVAG?
It was. There was a lot of crossing over there.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, that's for sure.
It is. It is. So that was that. CVAG, the General Assembly meeting, is June 24th. It's at the Classic Club.
Yeah.
$50 a head. There was a huge presentation by Green, and we've already been over that tonight, but they made a good presentation. And then the only other big thing they discussed was the MOU with RCTC to establish an initial CV rail fund. And so the feeling, I think, by most of the folks there was that we need to start somewhere. How they phase it in is indefinite with respect to the 10%.
Well, RCTC coming up with $4 million.
Yes,
as seed money.
yeah, right. That was incredibly good.
Phase in Sunline's participation.
But there was there weren't any hard facts on that phasing in. It was just kind of.
Right, because they're going to, they wanted the figure in there.
Right.
But because they don't know yet, they're still negotiating what it will be for the first year.
Right. So it's, as far as the Sunline board was concerned, I got the feeling that, oh, we can't afford that 10% loss. Yet we do know we need to start a real fund, so it's just kind of like the canal issue, you know, you're trying to rock a hard place.
Well, the biggest concern is if they do lose this revenue, how are they going to justify the areas like down in North Shore and Mecca and Indio and up in Desert Hot Springs, the expansion that we put in? Guess what? Those are the areas that we're going to say no longer in service. And these people are going to be out of luck getting bus. That's a concern.
It is a concern.
They have to address that.
Okay, Animal Campus. There was a suggestion that the cities look at adjusting their license fees. Some of them haven't been adjusted in a long time. Don't shoot the messenger, just, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
The county has enough money to redo the floors at the shelter.
Wow.
So they're sending out an RFP on that. I guess that kind of fell from the sky. 200 animals were transported to the Northwest at the end of April. through START, which is a shelter transport animal rescue team is what it stands for, but they bring in a couple of vans and they go to the shelter and they take a sampling of dogs, but 200 at one time. That's really great. Yeah, so, and evidently the northern section of the United States doesn't have many small dogs. Yeah. And so they just love these little guys. There's also a Pilots and Paws program that I didn't know about, where private pilots will take several animals and fly them somewhere. The Animal Samaritans president, Betty Maytag, gave a talk on wanting cities to contribute a small amount to set up a reward system for turning people in with respect to animal cruelty. And it was decided pretty much that they just need to join Crime Stoppers, because that's what they do. Yeah, so we didn't have to worry about contributing to that. Yeah. There is a dog whose name is Banjo, and Banjo was tied to the railroad tracks in Mecca. And he's a poodle terrier mix. He's the cutest thing you've ever seen, and they've had a gazillion calls for adopting him out.
Banjo.
They just haven't done it yet, yeah. So, and then with respect to CVAP, just to keep you, we get reports all the time from them. You know, you get your, weekly, monthly, or whatever it is. But they currently have 15 technology companies at the iHub. And FAFSA, which is it's a program that high school students fill out a form for the federal government. Yeah.
Fill that out
Okay.
for scholarships
And I remember a couple of years ago, they didn't have anybody apply from La Quinta High School. This year they were #1.
They won the award.
They did.
That's awesome.
Which is great.
60%.
CVEP is applying for a grant from the James Irvine Foundation of $1.7 million, and that would give out 357 scholarships at $5,000 apiece, which would be great. And and then Linda, did you want to talk about the blood donation city challenge? It's coming up in July. And I'm done.
Yes, Frank, we can talk briefly about the blood donation challenge that's coming up in July. So CVEP, one of their subcommittees, was working with Rick Axelrod from Desert Blood Services, which is Community Blood Bank combined with Livestream. And the goal was, is because there's such a shortage in blood donations, to combine the cities and do a city challenge. So that in July, every city picks a day that they host a blood drive. And I mean, we have the benefit of ours being at Livestream because the unit's set up there. And for us to help promote through our various entities, partnerships, schools, what have you. And it's almost like a bragging rights to go onto the tree of life that they have there for the donations obtained. And so I believe there was correspondence. I served on subcommittee with Elaine Holmes and Jan Harnick, Bill Powers, and a few others from Livestream to help create the buzz for this, and I believe a letter was sent to the mayor. So I think all we need to do is maybe work with staff in picking the day in July that we could kind of say this is our day, and then start working on signups, and obviously Livestream will take reservations, and that's the beauty of, again, having
It's already underway.
Do we have a date?
I don't know that we have a date, but we're working on it.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's part of our stewardship value.
Excellent. Yeah, you know what? When I was a kid, I would give blood because I didn't have money to give all the time, and you got free cookies. So I'm like a 5-gallon donor. You know, it's just that was my give the gift of life.
I did in college,
Maybe
but
2
that was when I
gallons.
needed food. And I was broke.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna say that. I don't have anything, Mr. Mayor. My meeting was canceled.
Okay, Terry?
And I will make mine fast. The Public Safety Committee approved sending a letter out supporting additional legislation, hopefully that will get passed, that Assemblymember Perez is putting together on the 109 alignment. And the Executive Board already approved the Public Safety Committee doing it prior to us doing it because of the time factor.
Yeah.
So that was taken care of. And I did send out, I hope you all got and had a chance to read a couple, well, I didn't send both press releases, but I did send out the press release addressing this is for RCTC, the Hicks Valley line.
Right.
I just, we are just so crushed over this whole thing that it's just incredible that we have spent the amount of time, the amount of money. This project started in 1995, and we own the line. It's an active freight line. We've been talking about since I think it was 1998, the passenger line on there. We've spent $76 million to date planning this and going through the approval process. 76 million. We have a 75 million commitment from the federal government, and the judge overruled us on our EIR from a lawsuit by the Friends of the Ruby Doe Mountain or whatever, whoever they are. Friends of some mountain down in western Riverside County. And I can't go into any of the closed session discussions, but we're not happy campers, so.
I can't be appealed.
I'm pretty sure that's where we're gonna go. We haven't been in closed session since we got the final verdict of her. Anyway, so I sent you that, so I wouldn't have to report on it tonight, but just remind you that you received it. And the other press release, though, is that today, whatever day that was, May 8th, the Riverside County Transportation Commission awarded a $632.6 million design-build contract for State Route 91. And I would suggest anybody going from here to Orange County in the next year or 2 or 3 figure out some other way to get there, because it's going to be rough. And it's rough now, but it's going to be rough under construction. I brought a lot of information on that 91. I'll leave it here at City Hall if anybody really wants to get down to the nitty-gritty. And I believe, now I have a revenue and tax meeting in 3 weeks, next month in Sacramento for the league, and I'm done.
Good. I haven't had anything, but I will be attending the Sunline Witch Hunt tomorrow, so we'll be doing our thing. Okay, we'll move on to department reports. City Manager?
I have 2 real quick items. First off, the efforts that you all did to reach out to our Assembly and Senate offices has unearthed the fact that they would like to continue dialoguing with us and have continued relationships, see how we work together. So we're going to be pursuing that. One of the conversations that we did have with them indicated that we're one of the first to do this, and they were impressed by the fact that the city reached out to them. So we'll keep that going. The second aspect is Chris and I met last week with the new superintendent of schools, or the not quite so new, Dr. Rutherford. Had a variety of conversations about a variety of things, including the fact that they're thankful that they're getting $4 million from former redevelopment agencies to plug their budget gap this year. But he also indicated he'd like to resurface the 2x2 meetings that used to take place between the district and the city. And so give that some thought about who might want to attend those, and we'll work then to set that up for September, and then have them on a quarterly basis.
If I can on that issue, I know previously on the council, I was had that position, and we met with them, I think, one time.
Yeah.
But if we're going to bring that back, I'll be glad to sit on that.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Frank. All right, City Attorney?
I have no report.
City Clerk?
There is vacation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members, I did want to get a consensus, if I could tonight, about the summer meeting schedule. I left you a report that I typed up quickly today. Excuse me. I did put down that the July 2nd meeting was a light meeting, but given the canal option that has been chosen, we will have to have that meeting. But traditionally, you do take off the second August meeting and the first September meeting.
Yeah.
So that would be August 20th and September 3rd. So some direction as to whether you'd like to do that again this year, or expand that, or contract that number would be great, would be helpful.
I'd be for continuing what we've done in
Sure.
the past.
We've done it for
The last
quite a
meeting
few
of
years.
August, the first of
Actually,
September.
what we've done in the past is we have not come back on the first Tuesday because of the holiday on Monday. We've come back, it would have been the 17th.
On the third
So
Tuesday.
is that what you're?
Yeah, that's what I was saying,
That's
yeah.
what.
Exactly,
what you
yes.
are agreeing to.
The
Okay.
August 20th and September 3rd.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I thought
Yep.
the yellow was. we were-
Thank you for that direction.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, any of our staff? You've already given.
Right.
Okay, we'll move on to mayor and council members' item. Just a quick item. I think you all saw the response from Brian Nastandi when he went to the Department of Finance supporting, what we were trying to do. I did call his office and I thanked him personally for his efforts on our behalf.
Yes, we did the same one for us.
Yeah, send them a letter. Tim,
And
thank you.
anything else?
Very quickly. I attended the, Time Warner has an event, or an essay contest every year, and for Best Moms, and I attended that little awards ceremony, and I was also one of the judges. And they sent the essays out electronically this year. It was really nice.
The first year I haven't done it.
Yeah. So there were about 25, I think, winners, elementary school, junior high, and high school. And then they pick one from each group, one top winner, and they get a laptop, and it's really nice.
Oh, good.
So the high school winner was from La Quinta High School, ninth grader.
Great.
She was ecstatic. It's really
Yeah.
cute, so it was good. Good event.
So speaking of wonderful events like that, where we're recognizing La Quinta citizens, I was honored to be a judge on the Top Women in Business that was sponsored by the Palm Springs Life, and they held their luncheon last week. And there were several categories, but there was an entrepreneur category, and Live Well Clinic, Dr. Nicole Ortiz was recognized and honored for her contributions, not only to being a woman in business, but also for being a successful business and a very involved community person. Shelter from the Storm, Women Leaders Forum, Fine Food Bank. I mean, Chamber of Commerce. I mean, she does a lot of things. Her and Sonia Fung both. So that was proud to have La Quinta represented there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's good. Christy, I've been to yours, the one you went to, several occasions, and they're great programs in there. Okay, unless there's anything else, I'll request a
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
adjournment. Then motion and a second, please vote. Motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the successor agency to the redevelopment agency for Tuesday, May 21st, 2013. Please let me know that all agency members are here. We have no closed session, public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on anything on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to confirmation of any changes by staff? No changes. By agency members? None? Okay. No presentations, no written communications. Approval of minutes of May 7th?
Moved.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Oh, got to turn it off first. Now, okay, now vote. Motion passes. We'll move on to the business session, tax allocation bond issue refunding.
We have about a 20-minute report here. No.
Actually, unless we need it, we just had this.
Right. I just want to introduce Robin Thomas is here in the audience. And so.
You want to give it?
But basically, credit where credit's due. She was the one that first brought this idea forward to us. At this point in time, it's my understanding she's still the only group in the state of California that has successfully navigated this through the Department of Finance. and they'll be back again on June 4th, when we'll be asking you to take some more formal actions as successor agency for this activity, and then going to the Oversight Board on June 5th. And if this is approved tonight, we will then be sending this out to the Oversight Board for their edification.
Okay.
Move approval. Second.
In discussion, one question. What are the fees that we're paying to do this where are the total fees we're paying to do this?
Can I take 40 minutes?
No. Sorry, but thank you.
Good evening. I'm Robin Thomas, Southwest Securities. We've got the fees right now at about 4.2. They are very conservative. The bulk of those fees go for bond insurance and the reserve surety bond fee at about 1.6. Next comes the underwriter's discount, and the following are the professional fees, the cost of issuance, the bond counsel, disclosure counsel, the list goes on. And we can provide you with a break.
So all combined, it's 4.5%, everything included?
4.2 million.
4.2 million.
What's a percent?
You know, I haven't figured that out. I can get my calculator, though. I'll come back.
4.2 million on...
Mr. Spevlicek has one.
197,000, or 197 million.
I know that we've had a discussion.
We don't have a mathematician in here.
It's about a little more than 4.
It's 2.1%.
2.1%. Thank you.
So you're half right.
And again, you know, I would like to add, again, it's easy for me to say it's conservative, but having gone through this process with DOF, what we really want to do is make sure that we only have to go to them once.
Right.
So I've got the interest rates high, I've got the yields high, I've got the costs high, so that everything works. They have 5 business days to request a review, and then 60 days in which to review this after we pass it forward to them, assuming you and the Oversight Board approve it in 2 weeks. So about 90 days to get to the market.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Are you sure? Last chance.
Send it.
Okay, that's all we have on that. Oh, well, I'm sorry, was there, yeah, there was a vote, wasn't there? A motion, please vote. Motion passes. Okay, now I'll ask for adjournment.
Move it.
You have a budget?
Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. Okay, at this time, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Finance Authority for Tuesday, May 21st at 2013. Let it be known that all authority members are present. Public comment, anybody wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to a confirmation of agenda. Any changes by staff? No. And by agency member, or authority members? No. Seeing none, I'll ask for approval of...
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes.
Move it consent calendar.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. Study session, preliminary fiscal year 2013-24 budget. We've already been through that. We don't need a motion, so I'll ask for adjournment.
Move adjournment. Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes.
Thank you. At this time, I'll call to order the Housing Authority agenda for Tuesday, May 21st. Let the record show that all Housing Authority members are present. I'll ask for a verbal announcement, AB 23.
Gotcha.
Executive Director, I'll have to go get this verbal announcement unless the city attorney can read it.
By reason of attending this meeting, the board members are entitled to, I believe it's a $50 stipend for
Yes.
the reason of calling this meeting. No more than 4 can be held in 1 month.
Thank you very much. Then I'll ask for public comment, if there's any public comment on this. There being none, a move for confirmation of agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
No.
There being none, I'll ask for approval of minutes of April 16th. We have a first and second. Please vote. Thank you. That item passed. I ask for consent calendar.
Consent calendar.
Have a first and second. Please vote. Thank you. We have no business session. We have the study session on preliminary fiscal budget. We've discussed this previously, so if there are no other items, with a second for the adjournment?
Second.
Please vote.
And before everybody...
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Before everybody leaves, I think maybe we ought to...
Yes.
congratulate Kathy.